Very briefly, we discussed among the parties, and we request, sir, if it's convenient to you, to do the conditions 106 session on Wednesday morning of next week. That's because of attendance and keeping the costs down, not having somebody here potentially abortively on Tuesday from our side.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the other request is a request from my side. If we could have 2 weeks, please, to get you a signed 106 after the inquiry closes on next Wednesday, that would be appreciated. If you want it to be less, I imagine I could do it in a quicker time frame, but just in case there's a mishap somewhere along the way. So could I have until the 6th of August, please, to get you the
that's fine.
version?
That's fine, yeah.
Thank you, sir. That's it from my side.
Okay. Ms. Hutton, anything from you?
Thank you, sir. Only one thing from the council, sir. I've got some pictures of hopper huts, because I believe that is relevant to design of the housing. And sir, just a page from the Historic England website making the short point that list descriptions are not a comprehensive record of special interest of a building. And I've shared these with the appellant. So I wonder if we could put those before you.
Yeah, the appellant, you're happy with that?
So this can all be discussed during the RTS.
Sure, yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I have the agenda, which seems quite sensible. So we'll just follow that. So the policy approach, item 1, including the internal heritage balance, and paragraph 215. So starting with the appellant, please.
Thank you, sir. I don't think there'll be much between myself and my fellow expert on this point, but we thought it was worth covering. You have in my evidence, sir, in section, we don't need to go there, but in section 4, my understanding of the way this matter is treated for decision-making purposes. I mean, broadly speaking, you define the significance of the asset, what setting contributes to its appreciation or its interest in its own terms, and then the test is the impact of the proposal on that appreciation or contribution directly. And then obviously you need to make a judgment about whether the harm is substantial or less than substantial. That's in the policy. It's common ground that any harm, well, we don't find any harm, but it's the council's position is less than substantial harm. And I think both myself and both I and my fellow expert invite you to consider, if you do find harm, where it falls within the less than substantial spectrum. And I think we both also agree that there is no published guidance from government about the language that's used in relation to a finding, but there is established professional practice, I'm sure you're aware of, which adopts a gradient typically of very low, low, medium, high, very high, coming just below substantial. And you have the respective evidence on that point. And it's also common ground, sir, that the best practice guidance on setting comprises Historic England's GPA 3, which it's certainly in my appendices, and it's in other places in the documents before the inquiry, and again, I'm sure you're familiar with it. I'd suggested, sir, that we put the term internal heritage balance into the agenda. I don't know, sir, if you've come across this concept. I think it's now pretty well accepted. Yeah, thank you, sir. I didn't mean to suggest you didn't know it, but and I thought that was relevant in this case, sir, in the event you found less than substantial harm. Now, my understanding of the way that can work, and it's down to you, sir, which route you take through this policy and statutory framework. For example, if you found there's less than substantial harm, but considered some of the proposals provided some benefit, you could net those off. That's the internal heritage balance, and conclude that there was nothing that needed to go into the balance at NPPF 215. Alternatively, it's open to you to take a different approach, and you could put all the benefits in on the 215 balance, and it really doesn't make a difference, as I understand it procedurally, as to which route you take. This is all in the context, sir, obviously, of my conclusion that there is no harm. That is, so I haven't got to that point by taking benefits into account.
Yes, okay. Ms. Tucker.
We are, yes.
Sorry, what was your first name again?
Joe,
Joe. Yes, so just so I get the initials.
no problem.
Yes, carry on.
Spectrum-wise, I use low, moderate, high, and then look at how I might elaborate on each area. The LVIA process has used the other terminology for a long time, but we're not LVIA here. Balance, I mean, that's Bramshill, of course, and it's a permissible approach, not one I followed, because you don't have to follow that approach. I've judged it's less than substantial harm, having taken into account the benefits that are being offered.
Yeah. Okay.
So the internal balance is done in effect.
Yes. I mean, I think, your position seemed quite clear on that anyway. So yeah, okay. So let's go on to item 2 then. So obviously I've read the previous appeal and what the inspector said about the heritage issue, which wasn't raised by the council at the last as a putative reason for refusal at the last one, but it was the inspector who decided that heritage was an issue. So yes, so Dr. Mealy, say your piece about item 2.
Yeah, well, yes, briefly, sir, I think, again, my fellow expert and I agree that decision is a material consideration of weight. I leave the weight that might be given to it, obviously, to your judgment, and Mr. Brown may have a view on that, but it's not for me to say. But I think practically from a professional point of view, that decision is how I entered the picture. You appreciate, sir, I wasn't part of the previous scheme. And a few months after the dismissal of the appeal, the appellant asked me to read it, that decision, visit the site, and then make recommendations to address the concerns of the inspector. And that led to a design development process, a pre-app process, and then the scheme you have before you. That decision, sir, I think is helpful I think it's establishing a baseline. This is not an inquiry where there's going to be a debate about why the land makes a contribution to significance. It's visual because of interaction, but it's also historic because of use and functional connection. And so that's just taken as read, and I'd understood that from the beginning. So it was very helpful from that point of view. I'm happy to move on to the pre-application advice, which is the second item on the agenda, or to offer my fellow expert. Oh yeah. Well, I think since the point comes up of me kind of coming to the site, maybe it's worth me just saying what I thought when I arrived and the basis for the advice.
Yeah.
So it seemed to me really self-evident that the land did contribute to the ability to appreciate the asset, both from a visual perspective and from a historical functional perspective. And so actually I agreed with the inspector that there was a setting issue there. Again, coming to it afresh is, you have the benefit of, no history on the site or previous decisions or anything like that. And the really significant thing I noticed when I was on site is that and unfortunately, sir, I wasn't able to attend the site review for professional reasons. I couldn't get out here in time for that on Wednesday afternoon. But when you're standing with the Oast behind you and or walking into that area just west of it, the landform makes almost a kind of plateau. And then there's a very sharp decline, topographical change. It's steeper on the north side and gentler on the south side. And it seemed for a start to me that the whole of that plateau had to be kept free of development. Because anything on that, in that setting, would, I think, inevitably encroach on the ability to appreciate the building's interaction with the landscape, which is the important consideration in this case. And so the advice I gave was to push the development away from that area and below it. And also to think about ways, actually, of taking into account the views back to the Oast, which I don't think really had been considered in any serious way in the previous scheme, the dismissed scheme. And so that
views back to the Oast from the
lower land, from the west principally.
From the west,
principally.
Yeah.
Because it seemed to me then that the Oast does occupy, along with the adjoining, or I should say, associated former farm buildings, which my fellow expert has drawn attention to, I think rightly, as contributing to the setting of the Oast, and which I acknowledge in my written evidence, that there was a opportunity to create a meaningful view of the Oast in its group setting on rising land. Now, you appreciate, sir, that the process of advising on a scheme like this is complex, because my advice is given in association with other areas of advice, highways, master planning, planning more generally. But that advice was given in the knowledge that we would have a pre-application discussion with the authority on a revised scheme. So we always knew that the pre-app scheme was a stage on a journey as part of a discussion.
Yeah, okay. I'd just like to ask you a few things about that. So, yeah, you felt that what the inspector said about the importance of the setting was right.
Yes.
Yeah. And the most important, it was important to keep the development below the plateau level, to maintain an open view, particularly from the west of the Oast, in its setting.
And from the Oast itself looking...
And from the Oast looking west.
Correct.
So, obviously, in terms of what the council's case is here, for instance, did you say to the appellants, in terms of your advice about the heritage, I really think you should keep the development no further west than a line going north to south from the, for instance?
No, I didn't, and the reason for that, sir, was that it's quite complicated topography, this site. And I didn't think it was possible to draw that line without some design work being done to establish levels and interaction with the topography. So there are certain cases, sir, I'm involved with very similar circumstances where I've been asked to peer review or give some further advice, where you're dealing, for example, with a level site and a linear view, and it's quite easy to make that judgment then, whether it's a plan view or an incidental view and so forth. Or even in the cases of landscape where you have borrowed views, you just say, well, it's clear the gap in the trees here was meant to focus on an eye catcher in the distance, so nothing should be in the gap. It's not that kind of setting. It's quite spatially and topographically, it's quite complex, and it isn't easily characterized. So I didn't think at that early stage, we could come to a definite view on location, and I didn't think there was an obvious line. I thought that the position of the development should be explored through the design process or what's sometimes called design-led optimization. Can I just make one further point going back to my initial observations? The other thing I advised the client from the start was that the setting of the OST obviously had changed detrimentally, but I asked whether the appellant could contact the landowner and if the red line could be expanded to include land running right up to the OST. Because from the historic maps I saw, it was clear, a number of things were clear. It was clear that there was a farmyard here. Like any farmyard, it would have been bounded. The OST had lost that boundary to the west, and some other places too. They're no longer paddocks or enclosures or the things you associate with farms. And likewise, and obviously, that the car parking was pretty unattractive. I mean, both the presence of the car parking, but also the treatment of the surface. So it was, just ill-considered, really functional pavement. It's not even a single material you will have seen. So it's pretty unattractive. And I advised the client and the landscape team that A, that the land should be included, and B, there should be an indicative scheme. Of course, landscape is a reserved matter. And the landscape indicative scheme reflects exactly the advice I gave.
So how was the line of the current development in terms of its most westerly, how far it extends to the west? How was that arrived at?
Well, it was arrived at through initial design studies, taking topography into account, and on the understanding that the fall in the land would, at least to a significant extent, conceal the housing from that view. And so there was I'm sure you appreciate this, there was I would say tension is too much a word. There are competing considerations when you're coming to a master plan like this. You could take the view that nothing west of a certain point should be permitted for whatever reason, but it's a master plan scheme on a sustainable site, so there has to be some kind of integration with the surrounding area. And so development to the west was felt to be that part of that integration. And I should say so that my instructions and scope of advice typically do include this sort of interaction with the design team, because having identified an issue and made a suggestion to try to solve it, the problem, inevitably then you get involved in some of the master planning discussion. So that initial scheme that was presented to the council wasn't fully worked through. It was presented as a point of discussion with the council, which again is absolutely typical in the way these things proceed when there are complex sites with competing considerations. And it might, just to round off, unless you have any other questions, sir, the second element in item 2 of the agenda is pre-application advice. Sorry. Yes, and thank you, Mr. Tabachik. So, my comments really are entirely to do with the last observation I made to you. So, if you get up the pre-app advice, which is CD, I don't know if you have it, sir. Actually, the file name doesn't have the CD number, so let me just... Oh, right, okay.
Something else.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. Tucker Appendix B.
That's a good place for it.
Yeah, the June 24 advice, yes?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, sir, if you turn on, I don't think it's paginated, but it's 1, 2, 3 pages in, pardon me.
Starting 5 heritage, yeah.
Correct, sir, and it goes over the page. It's about 6,
Yeah.
7 paragraphs. I'm just going to remind myself. So I think, sir, I direct your attention to the top of the second page after heading 5, beginning in terms.
Yeah. Got it.
I'm sorry to keep being irritating and interrupt.
No, I mean, having the plans might be useful in front
Oh,
of...
yeah.
That's what I was going to suggest. Just that you note what this was a response to.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can see that being
6.2.
13.
Yeah, I've got it in my evidence, sir, on page 13. But there's probably a larger version of it in the CDs. I don't... Or somewhere else. Maybe in the DAS,
Yeah, yeah,
actually.
yeah,
You have it, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Fine. Yes, so thank you very much for that
Yes.
reminder. So that my figure 3.2 is the pre-app scheme.
Yeah,
Now, I explained, sir, I couldn't attend, but my associate attended and reported back to me, and there was a discussion and a presentation he took part in. And we have the letter, obviously. So going back to the pre-app letter, I was taking you to the second para in that section, beginning in terms of harm. Are you there?
Yes.
sir? Thank you. And the council say, in terms of harm to the setting, the main factors related to the visual impact to the rural setting of the Oast House and the impact to the tranquility of its setting. Tranquility is a separate point, sir, maybe we'll come back to. The scale development was also considered to compete with and distract the landmark quality of the building. And certainly that first part of the first sentence, main factor, visual impact on rural setting, I agree. Second sentence, scale of development was also considered to compete with and distract from the landmark quality of the building. And this is the council reporting on the inspector's decision, effectively. So the council is confirming, and I agree, that these were main issues that she identified. And then there's the comment about the pre-app scheme. And the next paragraph. And it says, it's accepted that it is the western part of the site that results in harm to the setting of the heritage asset. Agreed. Or rather, that's a sensitive area. Reduced development is shown, provided by the heritage scheme. The officer's view was it did little materially to reduce the identified harm, still significant residential development. But then if you go to the next sentence, beginning the view was that the development to the northwest corner should be excluded. And if we pause there, sir, and go to the plan at my figure 3.2, you see there's a kind of courtyard-style collection of houses in that top left corner.
yeah.
I understand that's what's being referred to. And obviously, sir, in the submission scheme, that's removed.
Obviously, I just want to hear what the appellant says about it, and then obviously I want to hear...
Sure.
Ms. Tucker, you were at that meeting? Yes. Yeah, okay. Now, carry on, Dr. Mealy.
Yeah. So I had the record of the meeting, and
Yeah,
it was that parcel in the northwest corner that was of particular concern. And then southern portion, the next part, southern portion, which is the housing to the southwest, shrunk back to the easement.
I think there should be a comma.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and I think easement refers to the line of the power cables, but the council will clarify that point, and I wasn't in communication with the council.
okay.
With the road moved to utilize the original northeastern access to the eastern part of the site. So at that point, sir, you'll appreciate that there was a road, inconsistent with the appeal scheme, a road going along the sort of lower part of that plateau. So the three moves that the appellant's team made.
Just to be clear, it was... You weren't at this meeting.
I wasn't at this
It was
meeting.
your colleague who was on site with me the other day.
Yes, correct. Mhm.
That's right, yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Whose name I can't remember.
Mr. Kesseline, his appendices,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
yes, yes.
But obviously there were people from the appellant's team in the
Yes.
room, and, there was
Sure,
a discussion,
yes.
and we have the record of the council's advice.
Yeah, of course.
So the three things that changed after that letter, I appreciate the council may have a different view of that, etc., but the appellant's team understanding was that the northwest corner, that block of housing, to remove, and that was removed. The area of housing to effectively the northwest of the pylons, and then the road was taken from in front at the lower part of the plateau, the Oast, around the back of the whole farm complex. So that's the change. Those are the three changes. And you can see that on the, well, we may or may not need to go to the scheme, the concept scheme and the parameters scheme, the master plan. But if you compare 3.2 with that scheme, you'll see, if you have that up, sir, that instead of that block of housing that was in the lower corner to the northwest, there remained a line of housing. You can see that the southeast, or that block in the southwest block that projected to the side of the easement has been removed.
Shrunk back to the easement.
Yes, which, well, exactly. That's how we understood it. And that the road access has been removed entirely from the western setting.
Okay.
Yeah, and that in its place, that's when the concept came in of a pedestrian and cycle route from the northwest corner of the site.
Yeah. Okay.
That's yeah.
So at this stage, can I hear the council's view about that pre-app advice, what it means, what was discussed at the meeting, and basically your response to what Dr. Mealy said about that.
Yeah, of course. Perhaps just start with my involvement in the previous appeal scheme.
Yes. Give me the whole story, basically. Yeah.
My comments are at Appendix H, and you will note that I actually agreed with RPS that there was less than substantial harm in my comments.
So your comments at your Appendix H.
Appendix H.
Yes. Yeah.
I did make a note that it might be possible to accommodate the development within the red line in an alternative way to minimise harm to the Oast House at that time. And I was under the impression that up to meant that there would be a flexibility in the numbers. But of course, in the July following my comments in that November, I think it was, we had the case law on up to, which is actually another site in this district, which confirmed that the council has to be happy that the quantum of development can be accommodated within the red line up to that up to figure. So I was then, why my less than substantial harm agreement wasn't taken forward at the last appeal is not for me to comment upon. I'm an internal consultee and I wasn't involved in the last appeal.
You weren't involved in the last appeal?
No. But I agreed with RPS that there was less than substantial harm, and that is written in my response, Appendix H.
Yeah, your Appendix H,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I had mistakenly felt that up to meant that there would be flexibility in numbers to minimise harm, and as I say, that was clarified in July of 22. That's the Village Concerns appeal.
Yeah.
So obviously I was very interested with the way in which the last appeal was directed by the inspector and the Heritage Roundtable, although I didn't get involved in it at all. And then the appeal decision, when it came out, I felt was a very balanced appeal decision. My next involvement was at pre-app stage. I was asked by the planning officer who had been allocated the pre-application scheme if I'd attend a Teams meeting, which I did, to discuss the proposals that were put forward that are on figure 3.2 of Dr. Mealy's page 13. And at that meeting I said the housing to the northwest needed to go in its entirety, not just the courtyard development. And I believe that is reflected in the paragraph that's just been read out from the pre-app letter.
So sorry, are you talking about the pre-app meeting?
Yes.
The subject of this letter?
This letter, yes.
Yes, okay, so
I was there.
yes. So you said at the meeting on the 23rd of May 2024,
The development in the northwest should be excluded. And that was exactly what I said.
in its entirety,
Yes.
and
Unfortunately, Mr. Kessler-Lynn is not here today, but I have a recollection of that meeting.
why did you conclude that? Why did you think that?
Well, I went back out and had a look at the site before the pre-application meeting, and I had a good old look from the hospital side and Widgeon Way, and I walked the site as well. I had a look from the Oast, etc., and I felt that finger or island of development would look rather uncomfortable. Obviously, we're going to get into the current scheme and development along that edge. I know that a lot has been spoken about topography so far, but I think that we do need to take a step backwards and understand significance and the contribution of that setting to significance. And part of the setting and the contribution, the positive contribution, is the open space to the west of the Oast. And this would be beginning to trespass on that open space. And that left, so when you're stood at, in the hospital car park above the allotments, you get a very good view of that northwestern boundary of the site.
Yeah, let's just have a look at that view.
Yes, it's page 18 of my appendix G.
Okay.
And page 16 of my appendix G is probably the better one, actually. Looking over the top of the allotments. View east from the western end of Widgeon Way. The page numbers are on the bottom right-hand corner.
Yes. Okay.
I also know that the previous inspector did come and look at the site from this position. So it's not a new view that's been introduced.
Yes, I haven't actually looked at it from there yet, but I will do, obviously. Yeah. Yes. So given the wideness of that view and the fact that you can clearly see the houses on Birding Eye Hill there. Yeah.
This photograph was taken in February, so we do actually have the benefit of no leaves on the trees as well.
Yes, of course, but it's above the tree line, isn't it? You can see it above the trees. Yeah. Okay. So just we'll be getting. Okay. So it's right. I understand that. So just in terms of the items, should we?
Can we just go back to the pre-app letter, sir?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Let's just go back to the pre-app letter, and then we can move on to item 3.
Just wanted to talk about the housing to the southwest.
Yeah.
And my comments at the pre-application meeting that I specifically remember saying is that the line of development should not protrude forward of the western edge of the original farmyard. I'm not entirely sure what the planning officer meant by easement. Unfortunately, he doesn't work for the council anymore, so I've not been able to ask him his opinion on that. But I made it clear at the meeting, and we discussed it and the reasons why I felt it shouldn't project further than that in order to keep that original open land that had the functional relationship with the Oast, and as we looked at site on Wednesday afternoon, and I was able to point out to you the fact that that southern portion of land was the old hop garden.
Yes, I want to look at that in more detail.
Of course.
Maybe later on. So what you said at the pre-app meeting, which was an online meeting.
That's right. Yes, it was a Teams meeting.
You said it should not project further west than
The boundary of the farmstead.
yes, the line of the western boundary taken southwards.
Yes, that's
yes.
correct. Because I was aware that the plateau that's being discussed about in the topography, regardless of the fact that its significance is it was part of the old hop garden, meant that you would have this sort of, again, another island of development that would project out and beyond and would appear rather uncomfortable in the views again out from the western edge, but also be extremely visible in views from the Oast, not just at the top of the stairs, as we looked on Wednesday afternoon, but actually from the ground as well to the west of the Oast, because we could see that electricity pole that was discussed as being the edge of that area of housing.
Yeah. Okay.
I think also I don't want to get too caught up in views, which are an important part of setting, but we need to think about the twin roles of setting. It's the experience as well. And the functional relationship of the buildings with the land. And as Dr. Mealy pointed out, it's not just the Oast. We actually have an intact post-medieval farmstead. Well, in fact, it's more than 50% intact, as demonstrated on the Monuments Register, which I think I put at Appendix C. No. It is one of my appendices. Apologies.
Oh, the Appendix F, the HER record.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
And Historic England in their guidance notes that farmsteads with more than 50% of their remaining buildings are actually really important. They're an important survival. And here we also have an important survival of an important building in the farmstead being the Oast.
Yeah. Okay, just in terms of item 2 on the agenda, I think I understand both. I understand your how you were involved in the pre-app discussions, and so shall we move on to item 3?
Can we do so? Can I say something about item 2?
Oh yes. Sorry. Can you come and sit at the table, please, Miss Smith?
So, having been involved in the last appeal, unlike fairly Mr. Mueller and Miss Tucker say they weren't, it might be, I was of course involved in the last appeal, so it might be useful if I very briefly outline the history of the issue, sir, for you. As has already been hinted at by Mr. Mueller, for the last application, the appellant submitted a heritage assessment dated March 2022 that was produced by a Mrs. Jo Evans of the RPS group. And that's at CD 14.9 in the core documents bundle. And it was on page 23 of that report that she concluded that for the appellant that the development would result in, and I quote, a low level of harm to the setting and therefore the significance of the listed building. However, that was the appellant's evidence before the appeal hearing, that there was a low level of harm to the setting of the Oast House. That was the RPS group. I understand that by the time of the last appeal hearing, the council and the appellant had agreed there would be no harm. Apparently, and again, I don't want to put words in the council's mouth, but apparently it appears that this was on the basis that that was a conclusion that had been reached back in 2008-9 when there was a previous planning decision, you might recall, sir. And it had reached the conclusion that there was no harm back in 2008. But the inspector took the view in the last appeal hearing that policy had moved on substantially since 2008, do you recall? And she asked the parties to explore the issue at the hearing as a result. She said, we can't rely on that old appeal hearing. Things have moved on substantially as regards heritage since 2008. So she asked the parties to explore the issue at the hearing, and the appellants produced a proof of evidence for the hearing from a different witness, Mr. Kopp of the same group, RPS group. Rather than Miss Evans, Mr. Kopp put in a heritage proof of evidence. But he reached a conclusion that was contrary to that which had been previously reached by his colleague, Ms. Evans. He reached a conclusion that the impact would be neutral, and his report is at CD 1410. But of course, his evidence was rejected by the inspector.
So can I just stop you there? So the Miss Evans's evidence
Yes,
from RPS
yes.
was submitted as part of that appeal?
Well, it was the heritage assessment
Oh, it's the heritage assessment of the application.
in March 2022.
Okay,
It's
obviously I will allow you to come say...
It's in the documents, it's in core document
So-
14.9.
Sorry, can
I've lost my computer. Sorry, my computer's decided to shut down for some reason. Yeah, it's core document 14.9, and it's page 23 of her report.
So that was a heritage statement submitted as part of that application?
That's what I understand. So that was the appellant's evidence, or the appellant's report, March 2022, page 23. She concludes that there was.
Okay, but then the heritage proof of evidence was from her colleague.
Yes, who reached a different conclusion.
Who reached a different conclusion.
Which was rejected by the inspector.
Yes, because the inspector wanted to look at it in more detail and concluded.
Yes.
How she concluded, yeah. Okay. Yes, okay.
And I note now that Mr. Miller agrees with the inspector. And he says the inspector was right last time, that the larger scheme caused less than substantial harm. That's paragraph 3.15 of his proof of evidence, but he made that clear orally this morning. He said, in fact, that it's self-evident, I quote, I wrote that down, it's self-evident the setting contributes to the asset. I'll come back to, I think I'd like to make, if I may, some points when we get to item 5 of the agenda, but just I thought it might be useful that I'm giving you the background.
Carry
Thank
on.
you. That's all I had to say about point 2 of the agenda.
Okay, fine, yeah. Yeah, I think it's better if you probably stay sitting there and then you can take part. Okay, so can we...
We've got a few observations, if we may, on what we've heard.
On that particular point?
No, on what we've heard from the other parties.
Oh, yes,
If we may. Still on item 2.
Yes, of course, yes.
Still on item 2, obviously.
Sorry, I do find the trouble with roundtable discussions is that they can sort of get a bit unfocused, can't they?
There's always a temptation to address items 2 to 10 compendiously in your first set of submissions.
Yes, there is.
To an inspector.
Yes.
I personally, I will resist that, and myself attempt only to say things which relate to item 2, i.e. A couple of points on pre-app matters, but only insofar as they're going to inform your assessment of these fundamentally different proposals from the last proposals. We're obviously not here redoing
Yes.
the last inquiry.
Yes.
We have a different scheme, a different illustrative scheme in front of us.
Yes.
But I just want to pull out 2 points
Okay. It's,
about
that-
previous pre-app.
Yes,
matters.
that's fine. Yeah, we'll try and confine ourselves to the actual items. Yes,
Absolutely,
as you
absolutely.
say, because normally, you know, with a round table, you'd get in a hearing. The inspector will have got all his questions there and will want to go through them, which of course I haven't done to that extent. So, but I think the agenda is quite good if we can try and keep ourselves to those items. But yes, you go ahead now.
As I say, it's just 2 points, sir, and if we can take up each of the 2 previous advices that we've had in writing from the council. So can I
Yeah.
start with the pre-app or the app advice as it was in 21 from Miss Tucker, which is one of her.
Oh yes, Appendix H.
Yes, Appendix H.
Appendix H.
Yes,
The
the
bit
last-
where she explained that she thought up to meant, you know, literally up to, and then the
Yes.
case law changed.
Yes. Well, what I'd say about the up to bit is that there's nothing in here that says, and of course, as part of your reserve matters, you will have to keep half of the site entirely clear of development. But I think that point's been made already in my opening. But what I wanted to draw your attention to was, I think you had some evidence this morning that Miss Tucker said in this document she agreed with RPS, and I was struggling on re-looking at it to see exactly where that passage was. So perhaps that can be pointed out to us if it's here. What I see in the last paragraph is a statement subject to layout at reserve matters that's informed by a thorough understanding of setting. It should be possible to accommodate development proposed within the red line without harm to the significance of the listed buildings. So that doesn't seem to me to be, as I read it at least, but perhaps there's some nuance I've missed. And then obviously there's a reference to the outline nature of the application on that occasion. Obviously these are also outline proposals. So that's what I wanted to raise on that pre-app matter. But can I go back to the council's June last year pre-app advice, not to make substantive points about what the words "the northwest corner" means, because it seems we have a difference of opinion between us, which will be explored when we get to item 5, I think it is. But I am concerned about one point, and it's this. If you look at the passage that Dr. Mealy took us to earlier, it's within Tucker Appendix B.
Yeah.
It's the 4th page of that advice, and it's the phrase about shrinking the southern portion should be shrunk back to the easement. It's that phrase. Now, the only easement that there could possibly be is the easement associated with the power line. There's no easement down the western side of the farm. That's just the middle of a field. So that's the only thing that the easement can mean. And what's confusing me, and I just need some help from the council with, and in relation to what you've heard this morning, because obviously I don't have Dr. Mealy's assistant here, because I didn't know there was a dispute about what had been discussed and advised. I mean, there isn't a dispute about what's been advised. You can see that in black and white. But I didn't understand there was any earlier dispute about that, and this is why I didn't. If you go to Miss Tucker's proof and look at her paragraph 1.7,
Yeah.
you see at the end a reference to this Teams meeting, and Mr. Forder, who's the author of this letter, is referenced, and then the last sentence says the proposed master plan and formal pre-app response letter is included at Appendix B, that's what we just looked at, and records the detailed reasoning supporting the Council's position on heritage at the time of the pre-app discussions. So perhaps I've got it wrong, but I've understood that as a complete endorsement that the letter is accurately setting out the Council's advice to us. There's no indication that the letter misstates the position or that there's a fundamental disagreement between Ms Tucker and the letter, as on one view of her evidence this morning there apparently is. So that's what I wanted to draw attention to.
Okay.
So I'm not going to get into the merits of the lines at the southwest corner, just simply the question of what was the advice that we were following.
Yes.
And I think Dr. Mealy, I'm sure you'll want to go to Ms Tucker again, but Dr. Mealy's got, I think, a point or two also on this aspect before, if that's all right.
It's just a very brief, really point, sir, very brief, is that, again, you'll appreciate from the point of view of an applicant, as was then, and the team advising them, you have a meeting and then you wait for the letter, because the letter confirms the formal advice of the council.
Yes.
And it's at that point you make changes to a scheme if you think that
yes,
yeah.
Of course.
So just to be clear,
the
fact that I wasn't in the meeting is immaterial. We had the written advice of the council, which was well considered.
I'm not making any point about that.
Okay. Just for the avoidance of any doubt on this, actually.
Yes.
And that's and I explained to you how we understood that advice. So.
I used to be a planning officer. I know how it works. Ms Tucker, do you want to respond to that point, particularly this point about that paragraph? The view was that the development to the northwest corner should be excluded, which was your view, and the southern position, and the southern portion shrunk back to the easements with the road moved to utilise the original northeastern access to the eastern part of the site. Yes. So tell me about that.
Well, my recollection of the meeting was that we said nothing to the northwest boundary, and I made it clear from a heritage point of view that the boundary at the south should be moved back. I don't know what the word easement means here. I didn't have any part of drafting this letter. But I do take the point that I've relied on this letter as part of our submissions, but my recollection was that it needed to be shrunk right back so that you didn't have the projection of housing in the way that we have now. And the other thing is, I'd just like to point out, we never had any other pre-application options to look at. It could have been quite easy to have sent a draft and saying, can you just clarify this is the direction, we're going in the right direction. We didn't have anything like that. And normally, when I've been involved in major application schemes, we've had a number of iterations at pre-app, and we sort of keep the communication going.
Yes. So well, it says
I can't explain the word easement. Sorry.
Shrunk back to the easement. You don't know what it means. You didn't write the letter.
No.
The person who wrote the letter's not here.
No.
But you said what you said,
Yes.
which was it shouldn't be west of a line of the western boundary line continues southwards.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Fine. Okay. Are we okay to go on? Absolutely. Yeah. So, moving on to item 3. So the GPA steps. So, step 1, yes. So, identify which heritage assets and their settings are affected and why. I think we've sort of covered this really, haven't we? Is there anything else you want more to say, Ms. Tucker, about step one?
I just think there's been an over-reliance on the reason why this OST has been listed. It talks about the innovative system in the list description, but as we know, list descriptions don't describe everything that's significant about a building. Therefore, I think we should be looking at the OST and the round. Its specialist typology, its character in the wheeled, its functional relationship with its surroundings, its relationship with the other buildings. It all comes down to its significance. It's not just how it's physically been built. And its specialist flue system that we had a look at on Wednesday afternoon, and that Mr. Kessler-Lynn had the information on the Reed system with him.
So sorry, these additional documents that you've just given me. So just explain what they are again.
So, well, the hopper huts, I think we'll probably get to in the discussion of the housing proposals that are put forward.
The hopper huts, but the bit about the understanding list entries.
Yes. So, at the time that this building was listed, list entries were brief. In East Sussex, they are particularly poor, and we often get probably 17th century or something like that, and 4 walls, a roof and 3 windows. So it really is not until the Air Act came in 2012, 2016, I can't remember now, that there is a clear steer about the significance of building within the list description, but that is still subject to further investigation on significance. So throughout Dr. Mealy's submissions, both at application stage and in his proof of evidence, he talks about the reason why the OST is listed is because of the innovative flue system within it, but it's much broader than that. And therefore, when you look at it much broader, and then you look at what the contribution of setting is to significance, which is the other part of GPA, GPA 3 steps, you have to look at it in relation to its functional relationship, its physical relationship, and how you experience that in the landscape. So it's not just its stones and its flue system.
Would you like to say something about that, Dr. Mealy?
I only want to comment on in effect, the allegation that's been made that because the intrinsic interest of the building is not affected, somehow we disregarded the sensitivity of the setting. You have the HIA and the proof of evidence, and they both cover the contribution of setting to significant quite extensively. My section 5 has about 29 paragraphs on the intrinsic interest of the OST house, which is the starting point for any assessment. And then it has, I've just made a count for what it's worth, 38 paragraphs on the contribution of setting to significance. You'll read it and make a judgment, sir, as to whether or not you think we've given it short shrift. But I don't want that allegation, which I think is in that phrase, over-reliance, to be something that you take away unchallenged.
Okay, yeah.
I think I just would like to direct you to paragraph 5.11 of Dr. Mealy's proof of evidence, where he says the statutory entry explains the building is listed for the following reasons. Historic interest said to be the only fresh area surviving in Sussex, listed for technical rarity, and architectural interest, square stone building with slate roof and retaining its cowl, etc., etc. That's 5.11. That's not the only reasons the building would have been listed.
Yeah, again, sir, I just have to say, I'm reporting what the list entry says, which is the reasons, and the rest of the document then talks in more detail about the OST. Anyway, sir, I don't know where it goes because there's absolutely no difference of opinion between us on the significance of the listed building or on the contribution setting makes, the appreciation of that, indirectly or directly.
Yeah, okay. Right. I don't think there's much more to say about item 3, because we want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, really. And can I just say that one thing that occurred to me reading your proof, Ms. Tucker, was the hop fields. The hop fields, where they were historically, the evidence as to where they were. So I do want to look at that in some detail in terms of step 2. But obviously, I'm not. You can say what you want about step 2, but I do want to cover that point in particular because I wasn't very clear about what the evidence shows as to where the hop fields were. So bearing that in mind, if we go on to step 2, and I'll let Dr. Mee speak first from the appellant's side on step 2. So, I mean, obviously I've read the proofs in some detail because this is the main issue, but just so I can make a note of it, so I'm crystal clear about it, just indicate to me where, if you refer to anything in particular, where it's covered in your proof.
Yes, sir. Well, I've referred already to section 5 of my evidence.
Yeah.
And so from paragraphs 530 to the end is where I discuss this topic.
Yeah.
So I don't need to take you there.
Yeah.
But as I said in an earlier answer, there will be nothing between us on this point. I agree with the inspector's finding, and I would describe, and I hope this is not a contentious point, but it's worth thinking about setting in 2 ways.
Mm-hmm.
The first way is the visual contribution. So the ability to appreciate what was a farm building in a kind of remnant farmyard context, in association with land that is open and clearly has a purpose associated with agricultural use. Okay, pony paddocks, but it's this sort of successor, or it's complementary to an agricultural use. And that visual idea, I think, brings with it a few other considerations. Is how your ability to experience the particular characteristics of the Oast House in that setting, which contributes to significance. And here I think it's important to distinguish setting in 2 ways, sir. There's the immediate setting, which is the former farmyard, and then there's the wider setting, which is the fields. And obviously then the question is the features that you see of the building from different vantage points. And this is, I think this is a straightforward heritage case from that perspective, because there's the cowled top, there's the cubic form, and in an immediate setting, you obviously can appreciate all of the functional parts, so not just the kiln and the area for heating the air, but also the stowage and what was the cart shed down below and the stair going up to one side. So appreciating the whole of a listed building is best in its immediate context, because you can understand those functional parts and you can see them in relation to those older farm buildings to the south. But there are different viewing positions where the distinctive cowl of the building catches your eye and communicates the purpose of the building, and it's an attractive and distinctive feature. And those are, in my view, principally from the west.
Yeah.
We can talk about the road and the approach and so forth later, maybe if you want to. But I think those I've explained that those views from the north are, in my view, as you approach, kind of incidental because you only see part of the building and over a shed. But then the second component of setting that's relevant here is then the historical, functional, as I referred to earlier, relationship between the Oost and the land that was part of the farm that was built by the farmer. So there is a direct historical connection, which is interesting and contributes to significance undoubtedly. And again, I don't think that's not a dispute, it's agreed. And we can turn to the tithe map. The best evidence for where the hop fields were is the tithe map, sir. So I can deal with that now, that point, if it helps you since we're on it, because it's a historical point. I think Ms. Tucker's evidence does reproduce the tithe map.
Yes.
I think that might be the map you had in mind, sir.
Yes, that's right.
And that is...
I want the sort of figures.
It's a little hard, another criticism, it's a little hard to see.
Well, we might look at it online so we can try and zoom in.
There is also a high-res version in the HIA, which is much easier to read, the Heritage Impact Assessment accompanying the...
Oh, okay. Well, let's have a
because
look.
you can really clearly see the letters in that. I mean, again, it's not a criticism, it's been reproduced, that's fine. And I have, in my copy of the HIA, I've actually marked up what the things say.
So it's a core document in the planning...
It is. What is the core document reference? Sorry, I should have that. Oh, wait, I think I have it. It's CD, it's on the inside cover, CD 1.35, I believe.
It's also at my Appendix C.
Ah, okay, well, I'm sorry, maybe I missed, there was a big version of it there. Let's see. Okay, well, actually, so that's as well a good place to go. Again, you still can't, anyway, it's not a criticism. We can go to either of those places.
Yeah, yes, so...
Okay.
Oh yeah, it shows the numbers.
Yes, and that's how you ascertain the uses and the ownerships. Because there's a schedule that goes with it, obviously.
The apportionment's on the next page in the appendix.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it might be better if Ms. Tucker
Yeah,
took us through this.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll pause there then.
So, and obviously then we can talk about it. So just what I want to know is what were the historic uses of these fields. So just take me through the evidence as to what you think were the hop fields from the evidence.
So Appendix C, which is the tithe map.
Yeah.
The different uses of the fields are marked on as per the apportionment on the next page in relation to the numbering of those fields.
Yeah, I'm looking at the figure 3.1 in the heritage statement because it just shows the numbers clearer. So it just shows the numbers of the fields clearer, which you have marked on there. But you see what I mean? 1467, 1453,
68, 1451.
1451. Yeah. So yeah. So looking at those fields, just take me through the apportionment thing.
So 1464, which is the field the Oost actually sits on the edge of.
Yeah, that's
In the
northeastern field of the farm. Yeah.
Yes, that is down as pasture.
Yeah.
It's highlighted in green in the
Yeah.
14.
So
Six.
Robert Stone is the owner. Henry Stapley is the tenant,
Yes.
occupier. Pasture, 4 acres.
That's correct.
Route Remind me what Roods is. Roods is something lower
Yes,
apportionment. isn't it?
it's a lower measurement of land.
Yeah. So yes. Please continue.
Then you have 1467, which is to the northwest of, or
Yeah.
west and north of the Oast,
Yeah.
and that's down as Kiln Field,
Yeah.
referring back to the Oast kiln.
Yes. Now, what do you think that means?
Well, it was-
Field.
Down as arable in the description of cultivation, and arable land could also be used for growing hops.
Yeah. I mean, the description kiln field implies to me that it was probably used for growing hops because it's related to the
Yes.
kiln.
I mean, and it is right on the right adjacent to the kiln.
Yeah. Okay.
And 1453,
Yeah.
that's Barn Field. That's a little bit higher up in the
Yeah.
table, again
Yeah.
down as arable. And then 1451, which is below that, is down as the hop garden, with hops being cultivated.
Yeah. Which is the southwestern field of the land, isn't it?
That's
The
correct,
farmland,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, what's the significance of the green underlining on the apportionment map extract?
I think I probably did it for my own purposes and forgot to take the highlighting off.
Oh, I see.
Apologies.
It's not anything significant
No.
in terms of your case?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
apologies.
Okay. So, are there any other fields which you think could have been used for growing hops? 1454.
That's called Great Field, and that was arable again.
Arable. Does arable exclude hops?
No.
I think. No, it could include hops
Yes.
because obviously hops is a crop.
It's a crop, yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So in summary, you feel that well, clearly the 1451 hop garden, hops, clearly hops were grown there. And and you probably think they were grown on the kiln fields?
Yes. 1467 and 1468.
Where's 1468?
Sorry, 1453, beg your pardon.
1453,
Yeah.
which is the barn field.
Which is Barnfield, yes.
Where is 1468? Field 1468.
I don't think it shows.
Oh, is that one of the ones by the farm itself? Oh, no.
It's like a very complicated advent calendar.
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks to me as though it's the bottom left of 1467. It's very small. It's left in the end on the table. There's a sort of little bit on there. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I'm
Oh,
just,
yes.
I'm just trying to see where.
Aye.
About 1469, which is pasture.
Oh, yes, I can see that now. Yeah. Yes, it's the very northwestern corner of the farmland. Isn't
Yeah.
It? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So that's called Kiln Field 2. Yeah. And 1463. What is that? It doesn't actually list that one for some reason.
1463.
On the apportionment extract, it doesn't list that 1463 for some reason.
No, that's an omission on my part. I can find out what it is.
But it does list 1454 and 1454A, which is the bottom one, yeah. Okay. Right, but basically, Ms. Tucker, your view is which of those fields do you think were used for growing hops realistically, and when?
So 1451 was obviously being used at the time of the tithe map. And I have anecdotal information from the granddaughter of Mr. Berry, the farm owner, that 1453 and 1467 were also used as hop growing, and it's the photograph from their website which shows the ladies picking the hops that's in my proof of evidence.
Yeah, let's just have a look at that again. Can't remember where that was.
Page 23 of my proof.
Of your proof?
Yes. Yes, I was fortunate enough to be able to speak with the owner's granddaughter. She remembers the ladies coming to hop pick. Daughter, sorry.
So these would have been, the hop pickers would have been probably from South London or something like that?
More than likely,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely. They came down in their summer holidays with
Yeah.
children and picked the hops. And this
Oh,
is where the hop picker huts come from, because the farmers provided the small huts for the workers when they came down from London for their summer holidays, in effect, to sleep in.
And that picture shows the bagged up hops.
Yes, shows the bagged up hops. It shows the hop poles.
Yeah.
And it shows the fact that the hop binds had actually been dropped onto the floor by this point.
Yeah. So those bags would have been the hops, the sort of hops just picked.
That's
would have been
correct,
put in
yes.
those bags, and then
Yes.
those bags would have been taken into the kiln
That's right.
and laid out and
That's correct. Yes.
just spread out.
Yes.
On the left
left floor that we looked
Okay.
at on
Yeah, yeah.
Wednesday.
Okay, fine. So basically, 1451, 1453, 1467
That's correct.
were probably all used. All,
They
all
were.
the western part of this.
And as the Oast expanded, and the greater ground was required for the extra hops.
Dr. Mealy, do you agree with that?
No.
Okay.
So the tithe apportionment is extremely precise about the kind of crop and use that the land is put to. And if you go back to the schedule that's reproduced in Ms. Tucker's evidence, and whilst it's true, what did you get there? Whilst it's true that growing hops is, I accept, could be described as arable, the schedule itself picks out 2 instances of hops. So the schedule is very particular about the kind of crop that's being grown. And that's, of course, relevant, sir, to the historical circumstances of the tithe map, which is effectively a survey to collect taxes, from the old tithes commuted into payments. That's the Tithe Act.
Yeah.
So when it says coppice, arable, coppice, pasture, etc., those are the uses. This is critical at that point in time, 1838. And on the basis of that, a consideration of it is a historical document, sticking strictly to just its internal consistency, I wouldn't agree that the thing called Kilnfield 1467 and 1453 Barnfield were used at that point to grow hops. In fact, I think the evidence points exactly in the opposite direction. Now, can I just offer one observation, sir, and again with reference to that, only because it's a clearer plan focused on the land in the HIA. So it's very common in farm surveys for fields to be named in association with the building they abut.
Mm-hmm. So
Kiln Field is the field near the kiln. Barn Field is the field near the barn. They're shown in arable use. But I just like to focus in a little bit on that map because of what it tells us about the condition and structure of the land at about the time when the Oast was built, or by which point the Oast was built. We don't have an exact date, but it's constructed by 1838, probably the 1820s, more or less. The exact date doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, first point, all of the field divisions shown on this plan are gone. Second point, a really important structural part of the field, of the farm system on the west side here, is you see the hop garden, which I accept was used for growing hops. But do you see there's a little dashed line above that? And then there's an area 1452 to the west. Do you see?
Yeah.
So 1452 is a coppice, and that's like, we know that from the schedule. And of course, that's an important part of a farm's functioning. And that little route is clearly where the coppicing was taken up into the farmyard and distributed around the farm for use as required. You'll also see, sir, that the boundary of the hop field reflects a kind of topographical or slight depression in the land because you see a shadow just north of it. But again, sir, that feature, which is probably something like a shaw, wooded shaw, because it's on a point of change in level, that feature too is gone. So that the character, the enclosed character of the farm to the west doesn't survive. And that I'm completely at one with my fellow expert when she says, well, later, of course, these uses moved around. And I've no doubt about that. The fact is, at the moment, it's laid out for an entirely different purpose. And the land has lost those subdivisions, which are an important part of the landscape, historic landscape character.
What comments do you have to make about the fact that the kiln, the Oast, it was expanded, the stowage of the kiln was expanded. It was still used in 1965, but clearly there were new buildings built, including in the early part of the 20th century. So processing hops was quite obviously a major thing here. So where do you think they were all grown then?
Well, they would have been grown round about the farm. They could. I don't disagree. They could have been grown in Kiln Field.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't dispute. But that it was a large farm.
Yes.
So other fields would doubtless have been used. I haven't seen the anecdotal evidence of the record. I'm not disputing it. That's fine. But it doesn't mean those are the only places it was grown.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think the historical records we have of the farm is it's about 70 acres in extent. So it's a pretty large farm. What is that, about 32 hectares, maybe, something like that. So a little less than 10 times the area of the appeal site. And the ownership extended onto the other side of the road as well. I'm not saying that these fields are adjacent to the Oast, obviously, but so to cope with basically the economic change and the growth in brewing as an industry, which does take place from about 1850, particularly right the way to the First World War and into the 30s, this sort of high, decades of high, Kentish kind of hop growing, Sussex growing. Undoubtedly, more fields would come into production. And then the economic process goes into reverse in the 1960s because of the Common Agricultural Policy and the emphasis put on arable crops, and that's when you get field boundaries and fields, smaller fields thrown into one. Yeah. So, the use of farmland expands and contracts in response to economic circumstances. Yeah. There's nothing particular in the layout and configuration of these fields that leads me to conclude they were dedicated hop growing fields.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So, just coming back to the central point, the setting, the field setting of the OAST, in terms of whether there were hops grown in there. The farm was obviously, a large part of its business was involved hops and processing hops. So, well, I suppose I just want to hear a summation of what you feel about the degree to which the setting made a contribution to this heritage asset.
So I wouldn't conclude that a large part of his business was devoted to hops. I don't preclude that. I just don't have the evidence.
Yeah,
for that.
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry to be persnickety about it, but if we're talking about historical evidence, we have it or we don't.
Yeah, yeah.
And none has been adduced. So just with that caveat, I just make two observations.
Yeah.
I think the important characteristics of the setting today, which is how you assess setting impact, the setting today, what is its character now, is the open condition of the land. So it's freedom from buildings. It's green character, obviously. Its current use, which, as I said earlier, is obviously complementary to its historical agricultural use. So the general, all of that contributes. And then there's a historical fact, which we have documented at one point in time, showing a particular connection.
Yeah.
That fact is evidenced in historical documents, but it's not evidenced in the size, scale, position, characteristics of the former hop field, which is the only one we have definite evidence about round about the time the OAST was built. So I would, in drawing it all together, say, in my opinion, more emphasis needs to be placed on the first, generally rural, complementary to agricultural historical function category, than the second, which is latent, not evident, but recorded fully in historical documents. And another way to put it, sir, is if you wanted to understand the history of this particular farm, you wouldn't look at the land today, you'd look at historical documents. And nothing you do now on the land, which is not just, I don't mean to, at this point could easily be taken to an absurd position, but in effect, what's proposed doesn't change the historical record. So if someone were interested in studying mixed farming with a focus on hops in this part of the country in the late Georgian, early Victorian period, there's ample documentation relating to this site, as there are to other sites recorded in the tithe map. And none of that is affected by the proposals.
So you think what should be looked at in relation to the setting is how it is now?
Yes.
Yes, it's open agricultural land, albeit used for horses or whatever, and it's it's an open agricultural setting, and what you're saying is you're by and large retaining that setting around the OAST.
That's the essence of my evidence. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so can I hear from you, Ms. Tucker, about just your summary points, I suppose, on the setting and how it makes a contribution to the OAST?
I've set it out actually in part 5 of my proof of evidence. I've looked at both the physical surroundings and the experience of the OAST, the asset within those surroundings.
The two-part assessment. Yeah.
So it's clear the OAST house retains a visual relationship with the land with which it had a functional association, and that can be read. You've got open fields against a farmstead. You've got that visual association of the OAST with its farm buildings next door. And you've got an access into that farmstead, which is primarily along the original access route. So, although change has happened, GPA 3 makes it clear that where the setting relatively closely resembles the original setting of the asset, then it's going to contribute particularly strongly to the significance of the building. That's page 4 of GPA 3.
Yeah.
The experience of the Oast within the wider topography is on the ridgeline. It's seen in context with its late 18th, early 19th century grouping of farm buildings, with that open land sitting to its west, forming a readily coherent break between the edge of Uckfield and the farm, which reinforces the fact that that farm would have been isolated from the town, and I acknowledge the town has crept closer over the years, but you still have that experience standing in the hospital car park or Widgeon Way or whatever, of that gap, and vice versa, standing with your back to the Oast on the ground, or even from the top of the stairs. Yes, you do get a view of Uckfield, but you also get that experience of the fact that there was land that served the function of the farm. And it's within this land that we've got the appeal proposals. So, you know, the previous inspector talked about its landmark status, and I think that's readily visible in the fact that it is on this high point, and it's seen in association with its former buildings within this open landscape to the west.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, the farm has expanded over the years. You do have the modern farm buildings behind. They were for cattle in the 70s, which have now been repurposed. And, you know, modern farms contract and expand. I mean, the fact that you've got parking around the Oast now, quite easily have been used as parking by the farmer. Whether it was greenfield right up to the Oast, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
You know, farmers will use their land as they see fit. But you have that clearly identifiable edge to the farmstead, which we saw the original farmyard wall to that grouping of buildings as well, which had the break through it as part of the 1986 conversion application. Yeah. So I think, in my professional opinion, you've still got a clear functional relationship of farm with land and with open land, and there has been a cumulative impact on the way in which Uckfield has crept forwards, and, you know, pointed out in both of our proof of evidences that there has been a creep of development up Framfield Road, but we still have this really identifiable space.
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, could I make just a couple of short points?
Yeah.
Just
go on.
I think, sir, you asked about the stone wall on the site.
Yeah.
I don't think that's an original farmyard wall, because you wouldn't have stone for farmyard wall. I think that's actually the remnants of the lean-to that was to the north of the old Oast. And anyway, we don't affect that component. Second, we've just looked at the tithe maps, which show exactly that there was a boundary between the yard around the Oast and the rest of the field. So when you brought things to the Oast, you brought them to the farmyard. You didn't bring them up directly to the field, because that makes sense, because the farmyard is a central resource for the farm. And that's an important point to bear in mind, and why I drew your attention to the little lane for the coppicing. So irrespective of the fact you might have grown hops in the north field called Kiln Field, it still had to be brought to the farmyard to be brought into the Oast. And I think just a final point, we probably agree on this actually, but I think it's important, and when we're focusing on one issue, to look at the whole of the setting and your experience of the building. Because obviously it's now in a commercial use. Obviously the barns that have been converted were not original to the farm at all. The amount of hard standing is quite extensive, but critically the nature of the use is different because it's a commercial use. And the Oast itself is in part a small commercial unit. And that use goes to character, or contributes to it. That's all I had to say, sir.
Yeah. Sorry, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just that obviously farms change over the years, and
Yeah.
these buildings were the cattle shed buildings because Mr. Berry was a dairy farmer. He has now retired, and the buildings have been repurposed. But the extent of hard surfacing is the farmyard. The wall, with respect, is the original farmyard wall because it actually continues beyond the end of the barn and round towards the farmhouse, and we viewed that on site on Wednesday afternoon. And just turning to the way in which fields are laid out, they're bound to change over the years because farmers will use fields as they see fit. We didn't have hedgerow retention requirements in those days.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ms. Smith, do you have any points to add on step 2?
Not on item 4.
Not on item 4. Okay. Okay. So, shall we have a comfort break?
Yeah.
Say we'll come back at 12:05. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so the step 3, the effects of the proposed development on the setting and on the significance, moreover, of the Oast House. So, Dr. Mealy, you first.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I wonder if I could just, apropos the earlier discussion, put in one document. What it is the constraints plan relating to the last appeal scheme.
Yeah.
So it was a core document last time. It was available to the council, obviously, between 2021 and now. There's a similar-ish document that's CD 1.7 that's the constraints plan for this application, but you don't need to look that up, and that, I think, is a document the council didn't have at the time of the pre-app letter. This document they did have at the time of the pre-app letter, and if there's no objection, I'll circulate it and explain why.
So as it is, I first I've heard of this.
So I thought we'd finished talking about the pre-app issue.
This is a response to some points made earlier, but obviously it's a document that's not been in the inquiry library. So I'd just like to show you.
Fine, yeah. Thank you.
And you might note the blue diagonal line, which is the power lines, and at the bottom the key says existing overhead electricity cables with easement.
Yeah.
And so there's a similar diagram now at CD 1.7, but the point of this document is that the council had it prior to that pre-app letter. So that's all.
Well, I mean, the council had been to the site before the pre-apps anyway, hadn't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't. That document wasn't part of the pre-app, so I didn't look at it in relation to the pre-app.
Okay. Fine.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. You just now when I mentioned to you, you said, and yesterday you said that you wanted for me to go on site and look at a couple of issues. Can you just explain what they are?
Yes, well, I think some of them are matters that we'll be picking up when we deal with step 3.
Yeah.
There's one other matter which perhaps Dr. Mealy would actually be best talking to. I'm not sure there's a particular agenda item that relates to it, but it's about arrival in the northwest corner from Framfield Road and what you see from there. But it would be best coming from Dr. Mealy.
Okay.
I'll just briefly say, sir, that I think you stood in the spot in the northwest corner, but there was a particular point that I wanted to make sure you'd seen, because it would be a view of the Oast from a certain location on the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was going to draw attention to that in my answer to, or my comments on step 3.
Yeah, well, we can talk about
okay,
it.
but that was the main issue, and I think I wasn't around when, on a site view, when people stood on the stair.
Yeah.
But I think I'm happy to address the points and just to go there with you. I'm in your hands whether I want to continue your evidence or not at that point. It might simply be to ensure that the points I'm making now orally, I'm in your hands.
Yeah, just make your points orally, and then we can have a look from there on the other side. Yeah.
All right.
So,
all right, that's helpful, sir.
So yeah, you just carry on with your step 3 issue.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I'll be brief. And obviously, we're talking about the development.
Yeah.
Having in effect 3 parts that I want to comment on. So there's the north element and the southwest, and then there's the enhancements and the retained open land. So in simple terms, from the southwest, in relation to the southwest houses, I think, sir, I just invite you to consider the limited opportunities for seeing the southwest development from within the immediate setting of the Oast. Bearing in mind that to the immediate south of the Oast is a single-story farm building, which obviously interferes with your ability to see a good deal, well, all of the development really. And I mean, you can do this, sir, on your own, but I think applying a straight edge to a point which I'll walk you to on site immediately west of the Oast and at the proposed new boundary, maybe if you took a plan up, it would help. Yeah, there's variously, sir. There's one of my evidence, certainly, at... That's all right. Yeah.
Page 38.
Yeah, thank you. That's right in my evidence.
That's 39.
Yeah, 39.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bless you. Evidence. God bless you. There we go. So, sir, if you just to strike a line immediately sort of heading west from the Oast, you get to the boundary area, and you get to a point which will be the limit of the new boundary. And in my judgment, because of the interposition of the single-story building, from that point, you would at most see, at most, the very westmost houses, 2 or 3, in the southwest development. And bearing in mind, sir, that would be over a new boundary created, and from a position which I can point out to you on site that if it did matter, this glancing view, that landscaping would eliminate the view entirely within the scheme.
So you take a line westwards from the Oast to the boundary of the red line.
Yeah.
And so you're and on that point on the red line, you're looking southwestwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
That's where you want to take me to.
that is where I want to take you, and we can have a plan and we
yeah.
can do the alignment ourselves. It's just to establish potential intervisibility.
Yeah.
And I can point out to you an area, because it's much easier to do on site this, frankly, than with a reference to a plan. I can point out to you where, if there was any view, the nature of that view and how it might be managed at reserve matters, conditions, discharge stage, landscape. That's that point. So, sir, I think within the majority of the setting of the Oast, the southwest development would not be visible. And my evidence is, at the most, views of it, what I've just described, would be limited. But, sir, I think it's really important to remember that when we're looking at something on the periphery of the view, to consider what the direction and overall effect of the view is. And my feeling is, when I stand to the west of the Oast, what you're most aware of is the sweep of space in front of you and the periphery to either side. So the Oast itself as a building is not oriented towards that. And in fact, neither is the farmyard, because it's the old farmyard, because it's enclosed. So I don't think there will be any material intervisibility from the new landscape to the west of the Oast. That's my judgment. I'll stay with that point just in terms of the stair.
Yeah.
This was another point that I know was debated on site. And again, this is best judged on site, but again, working on the basis of a straight edge and bearing in mind there's a 1- and 2-story building in between, I've calculated about 10 or 12 houses at most that you'd see from the stair. And again, we can point this out with the benefit of the plan on site and a straight edge, and we can simply agree it. There's been discussion about the stair and the view from the stair. I want to make some observations about that, bearing in mind that I accept you would see the western part of the southwest development from that point. I accept that. First point is, in itself, seeing that development isn't necessarily harmful, because that development is appreciated against a wider sweep of retained space. Second point, is that the setting of the Oast is urbanized to an extent already. Now, I'm not saying two wrongs make a right. I'm talking about the general character of the setting is already in part urbanized because of the encroachment of Uckfield. The third point I'll make, and I think my fellow expert and I would agree that there probably was a stair in this location. The stair that's there now is from the 1980s conversion scheme, it seems to me, just judging from the way it's constructed. But it's a place you pass through, it's not a place you linger. So these are incidental views, and I don't think contribute in a meaningful way to the appreciation of the Oast's interest. And even if you form a different view, sir, which obviously you can, you nevertheless still have the retained open land. And likewise, you have the enhanced landscape right in front of you that you're looking over. So there could be some encroachment, which you might deem harmful from that area, but there'll also be enhancement in the immediate setting. And it's not a viewing position I think is of any great consequence when it comes to your experience of the building. It is now basically an access to a small commercial unit on the first floor, again, which you will have seen.
So you said that the setting of the Oast is already partly urbanised.
Yes.
Just explain that.
Well, I think from every part where you can appreciate the Oast in relation to the open land to the west, you also see bits of Uckfield. You see bits of the town as it's expanded.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just wanted to caveat that to be absolutely clear. I'm not saying, therefore, any old change is acceptable. I'm not saying that. That would be the sort of two harms don't make a right point, but I'm not saying that. The point I'm making is the general character of the setting does comprise modern residential development. So seeing a little bit more, I think, doesn't really represent an alien intrusion or something completely foreign, because one's aware of it already. So that's my evidence on the southwest quadrant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, sir, in a similar way, but and bear in mind, sir, as you will know, that these impacts that we're talking about are over some distance. So the nearest house in the southwest quadrant to the Oast is 110 meters away, roughly as I scale it. And the houses that you might see are beyond that, those near houses, and they're on land sloping down. So in effect, they're sort of receding from you, from the view on the staircase. And I think, sir, there's a similar point to make in relation to the northern component of the development. From the new enclosed boundary area to the Oast, views will be very limited. The direction and orientation of the view will be in front of you, because there'll be a really, in fact, I think it's very dramatic, the way the plateau I described to you at the beginning suddenly falls away and you don't see the land. I think that creates a very strong visual characteristic. But on the northern boundary, sir, you will have seen, I'm sure already heard, that the slope is quite steep at that point. The level change and the gradient are very significant. And so what you would see of that development is again going to be limited. And if it's judged that a limited view is harmful, then it's a matter that can be dealt with by landscape at reserve matter stage, if that's a problem. I think my fellow expert and I will agree that the architectural design of those buildings, as presented in an indicative way, could be said to draw on vernacular characteristics. I'm very aware that they're not similar to Hopper's huts, which are only a single story, but I don't use that word in my evidence. And as I understand it, the architects were simply taking a cue from a vernacular form. So I'm not thinking of them in that way. I'm thinking of them as a collection of vernacular-inspired houses, differing roof forms, and so forth. Again, all reserve matters, but perfectly capable of being achieved. And again, sir, separating distance is important, because at the nearest point between the Oast and the first house in the development, this is the eastmost house is about 130 meters. So there's significant separating distance as well as sloping landform. So again, for those reasons, sir, the peripheral nature, the fall of the land, and so forth, I've already outlined. I don't think that those effects will be intrusive in your ability to appreciate what the rural land, what the land that's now in kind of rural agricultural use contributes to the Oost, subject to its landscape design. I'll just comment briefly on the landscape design, because I know that's been criticized for various reasons. As I understand it, all those matters are matters that could be dealt with effectively at detailed landscape stage, reserved matters stage. But I think one of the points I want to show you today, sir, is really just how attractive the view of the Oost with its farm buildings is from the northwest corner. So you see, sir, on the plan, if you still have it open, the path in from the northwest branches. There's a fork on the left that goes up to the houses, and there's a fork on the right. From there or thereabouts, there is actually a very beautiful view of the Oost in a sort of landscape that's undulating in different directions. You see very little of the big shed dairy buildings, and you see the brick traditional buildings. So that is a view, sir, I think, which I invite you to give a lot of weight to the creation of that view as a public viewing opportunity, because it is so beautiful and of such high amenity value relating to the special characteristics of the listed building. And of course, that's a view you'll have, sir, as you continue on the path in varying degrees, because the landform changes. You'll see only the top part of the Oost from some bits. But by the time you get to the path's junction with the perimeter road on the southwest housing, again, you'll get some more attractive views of the Oost in the farmyard building context. So this, sir, the creation of new views enabling better appreciation of special interest is something that best practice invites us to consider, and I invite you to give weight to it. And sir, because the view of the Oost in its context is so attractive from that northwest corner, it seems an obvious place for a bench or an interpretation board or something like that, because it's so attractive. I think it's one of the only places I experience where you'd want to linger to any great extent and enjoy it. Finally, I'll just refer to the, penultimately rather, you know, sir, that there's a proposal to enhance the setting of the Oost. It seems to me that's a benefit in addition to the landscape scheme, which can be managed as sort of, pasture or meadow-like way. So I don't think that a modern landscape scheme is necessarily at odds with the rural character of the land. It depends on the detail of the scheme. If it was manicured parkland, yeah, I kind of would understand the concern that the council have expressed, but this land isn't suitable for that kind of land management because of the slope. And what's proposed, I think, is both suitable historically and functionally. And the final point really is about the roundabout. To the center of the roundabout, sir, the nearest distance to the Oost, I've calculated about 150 meters. You can scale it off. It's there or thereabouts. But of course, sir, that feature, between that feature and the Oost, there are some modern large sheds. And that approach, sir, off the B road, I don't think is an approach that communicates anything meaningful about the setting of the Oost. It's a transient view, and the Oost is only seen partly, and it's not seen in connection with any of the older farm buildings, and it's seen over the roof of the 1970s dairy shed. Because, I mean, by the time it appears, I hadn't made the association with dairy farming, but I mean, thanks for that, because clearly by the time the building was listed, that was in place, and the farm had already gone over it more towards more intensive pastoral farming. That's all I have to say on it, sir.
Okay. Right, Miss Tucker.
I have to respectfully disagree with my colleague on quite a lot of those points.
Yes, no surprise.
You've read my proof of evidence. Perhaps I could just take you back to our site visit on Wednesday afternoon, attended by Mr. Kessler-Lynn on behalf of Dr. Mealy. Mr. Kessler-Lynn pointed out quite a number of the areas that I know Dr. Mealy wants you to look at again, including the rest stop at the top of the path, where he felt you could put a signboard so while you were getting your breath back from walking up the slope you could enjoy the view, which is fair enough.
Yeah, that's the nib on the drawing.
That's the nib on the drawing that we stood on. We stood at the top of the stairs, and I think it was Mr. Brown who showed you what we would see of that southwestern portion of the housing. So I don't. We've looked at that. The plateau. Can I just take you to my photographs?
Yeah.
So, if we start with my photographs on page 10, because what I do is then swing round on 11, 12, 13, rather than give you a panoramic which is minute. The northwest houses that back onto the houses on Framfield Road, you can see that forms part of the plateau from that first view on page 10. And the field does gradually drop away. It doesn't drop away steeply until we got to that point where we climbed up out of the gill. And we got to that sort of junction of the paths on the site. And then if you turn to page 11, and again, I'm stood with my back to the Oast, but in the car park area, so in the area of land that it's proposed to re-landscape, you can see there is a clear edge to a flat area of plateau that's marked by I think really by the fencing, and that continues on page 12. And then on page 13, you look across to the southwest to the plateau of land with the telegraph pole on where the housing is going. You can just see the telegraph pole in my photograph. That's page 13. We looked across and we walked around that area by the telegraph pole. That's where it had been ploughed. Or down towards that area anyway. So the view out from the Oast, you get this idea of a plateau and of Uckfield on the other side of the gill on the rising land, and these photographs were taken in the winter. You don't see quite so much now. But if I can then take you to the photograph on page 16. And I know you're still to walk over and look at the site from the hospital side and Widgeon Way. You don't get any appreciation of that plateau. It's just gently sloping land. And then if you look at page 17, that swings round, so you see where the southwesterly element of housing will come to, because you've got your really useful electricity pole again. So really I think we've got to be careful that we don't just restrict our experience of the Oast within the landscape in the views out from the Oast, but also the views in from the wider landscape. And I know the LVIA also looks at the views from the hospital side. I don't disagree. It would be nice for the public to have potentially access to the land to the west of the Oast and the views to the Oast, but setting doesn't rely on public access to views. There is already this view in the public domain. And I think the one thing that I'd like to draw to your attention as well, looking at photograph on page 16 of my proof of evidence, is as we walked it, there's that footpath route along the hillside. which we discussed was going to be 3 metres wide for pedestrian and cycle use, that it would have to be engineered and cut into the topography, even though the route has been altered since the original appeal submission or application submission, and that it's got to be lit. The argument yesterday about what that means, I could range from a bollard to a street light, but regardless, you're going to have a visual change in the setting, the way in which that land is managed, the diurnal change to that setting through lighting, which also will occur with the light glow from the roundabout lighting. You are no longer going to be looking out into a darker landscape, which you do at present, and which I think the photographs in Dr. Mealy's proof of evidence clearly demonstrate. The Oast isn't lit at the moment, but neither is any of the landscape around it. It's a dark landscape, so we're now going to introduce that kind of urbanisation into the landscape. The hopper huts are actually mentioned in Dr. Mealy's proof of evidence at paragraph 6.9. I have no recollection at all of discussing anything along those lines at the pre-app.
Sorry, 6.9.
Yeah, of Dr. Mealy's proof of evidence, page 35.
Yeah.
And we stood and looked up at the site visit from that junction of the paths up that northwestern side. And because the land rises, I know that they are proposing predominantly 1.5 and 2 storey, but with some 1 storey along there. Potentially could be vernacular design, but that's a reserved matter. It's all illustrative, but that area of development, when we walked out to where the edge of the roadway would be as well for that development, demonstrated the strip of urbanisation you'd have along that side of that open space. And I've got no argument that we're looking at an outline application with reserved matters, but on the other hand, we have, I assume, a housing mix that's got to be achieved, and that will come into play when it comes to the size of the housing required along different parts of the site. And it might be that they can do single storey only up this side, but you are still going to get the associated projection of built form and all the infrastructure that goes with it. Turning to the roundabout, again on Wednesday afternoon we actually went and stood in the field, but I think what I'd like to turn back to is actually the experience of arriving at the farmyard now. As you turn into the farm access from the B2102, and that's page 15 of my proof of evidence, you're on that lower western edge of that field, that entrance field, and it is a field. Again, your experience is driving between 2 portions of open land, not hugely engineered. And actually what you do see, and it's quite clearly shown in my photograph, is the Oast, and the element immediately in front of the pyramidal element of the Oast is actually the extension to the Oast, the late 19th, early 20th century 2-storage stowage. So what's going to happen in moving the entrance further east along Framfield Road, you are not going to have that experience anymore of arriving at the farmstead. You will have the experience of highly engineered piece of roadway, which is in fact 2 roundabouts, cut into the hillside with a 4 to 5 metre change in levels between the road and the top of the retaining wall, which we discussed yesterday.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I'd like you to show us, please, where that comes from.
What's that?
The
The change in levels? Oh yeah, that's on here. At 425, and that's SK29 that the highways you've provided highways with yesterday. You've got all the spot heights on, starting at 45.969, going up to 49.090. SK29. And we actually went and stood on the position of the mini roundabout, and we looked, and I was asked, could I see the Oast? And I said, yes, you can just see the top of the Oast cowl. And Mr. Stevens said, oh, well, you won't see that because we're actually going to be a metre below where we are now. So we are losing any appreciation of the approach into the historic farmstead through this engineered change to the landscape. Now, this has been designed for safety. That's not for me to comment upon, but I can comment on the visual impact that there is going to be through the changes of levels, the signage, the lighting. And we also need to remember that at the moment it is going to that tranquility point that was brought up by the previous inspector, relatively tranquil there. Yes, while we were there, I think 2 lorries came in and out. There wasn't any other particular noise or sound going on in that site for the whole of the 3 hours we were on site that afternoon. Nothing that was particularly noisy or took your experience away from being in that area of farm with the surrounding farmland. And I also would like to point out, when we went to look at the eastern part of the land, when we looked back across the more modern farm buildings and between and through them and past the farmhouse as we swung round, the Oast was a dominant visual feature as you moved around the site. And I think, to my mind, that's what the previous inspector was alleging when she said that the whole of the appeal site was within the setting of the Oast. Let me just check if I've covered everything. And I think also Dr. Mealy made a very good point. There has been change, and there has been change to the way in which Uckfield has expanded and is now more prominent within the setting of the Oast. So therefore, where we have remnants of that setting left, actually it makes them more important to retain them of the original setting, because that actually heightens their contribution to importance. And secondly, GPA 3 does actually ask us to look at the impact of cumulative change. And it says where the significance of a heritage asset has been compromised, whether it is or isn't here at the moment by the expansion of Uckfield is a moot point. We need to give thought to whether additional change will further detract from the significance of the asset. So looking at the whole thing in the round, and not just looking at the views out, but the views in and the experience and the appreciation of that farmstead and Oast within the landscape, it's my view that particularly extending to the west of that farmstead line will have a detrimental impact and harm on the significance of Oast through the erosion of that open setting. And that is as it's viewed in the round, not just from a specific point with your back to the Oast or off the stairs or whatever. And there is that knock-on impact of the loss of tranquility, the movement of vehicles, traffic, people, lighting, that are endemic with a housing infrastructure project like this. Let me just have a look. I think that was all my notes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Fine. Ms. Smith, would you like to add your comments now?
Thank you, sir. I'll try to keep it brief because Ms Tucker has already made some of the submissions, but I'd like to add 1 or 2 points if I may.
Sure, yes.
The starting point I would ask the inspector to note, sir, I'd ask you to note, sir, is that Mr Mealer made it quite clear this morning that he agrees with the inspector's conclusion last time that the previous scheme caused less than substantial harm on the setting of the Oast House. He made that clear in his oral submissions, but if you need a reference, it's paragraph 3.15 of his proof of evidence. Mr Mealer says, right, well, I was called in to give advice, and I gave 2 pieces of advice. The scheme is reduced to 190 properties, and the location of the housing is moved so that there is now this large area of open space running to the northwest and southwest of the Oast House. So there is now an open area to the west. That's his first piece of advice that, as to how things should be changed. The second piece, and that's paragraph 3.20 of his report. His second piece of advice he gave was that the car park next to the Oast House could be landscaped to enhance the immediate setting of the listed building. And that's paragraph 3.21 of his proof. So it's those 2 factors alone that led him to lead to his conclusion now, contrary to the inspector's views on the last appeal, that there's no substantial harm. So it's those 2 points that he's relying on, essentially, of the change of position from agreeing with what the inspector said last time to now reaching a different conclusion, no substantial harm.
No harm.
No harm, sorry, no
Yeah.
harm. And I'd make 3 comments, if I may, on his evidence in that regard. First, Mr Mealer's looking at, as Ms Tucker stressed, views onto the Oast House, into the Oast House, from the surrounding areas. Mr Mealer's focus on his report was primarily on views into the onto the Oast House from the west, and he stressed this morning the how he put it, the beautiful view from the northwest, the beautiful view from the northwest. But as you say, you will have seen, and I think Ms Tucker also made the point that views from other aspects are also important. And I'd ask you as well to focus on the view from the site when you access the site. The access into the site, what views you currently have and what are proposed under the proposed development. And you'll recall how when you drove onto the site on Wednesday, the view you got of the Oast House, in particular, the prominent view you got of the cowl on top of the Oast House. Now, Mr Mealer said in his oral submissions just now that when you access the site, you only get a partial view of the Oast House. But I say it's very important that you get a view of the Oast House, and you get a very clear view of the prominent cowl of the Oast House. And I'm emphasising the view you get of the cowl because when you look at the Heritage Statement of Common Ground, paragraph 4.3, the cowl is stressed as being, and I quote, a recognisable feature of this locally distinctive historic building type. So the cowl is a very important feature of this locally distinctive historic building type. And at the moment you get a very clear view of the prominent cowl as you access the site. And at the moment, of course, the access that you get to the site is you're driving, as you did yesterday, along a single track carriageway between open fields. The access to the site is low-key, rural, unlit, unobtrusive. You saw it yesterday, but there are photos on page 16 of the design and access statement. You've seen what it looks like. And the view you get of the cowl in particular and the Oast House is across these farm buildings and these open fields. The proposed new access to the site, as Ms Tucker said, replaces this rural view of the historically distinctive building and the cowl with 2 roundabouts, a substantial amount of tarmac, numerous access routes on and off these 2 mini roundabouts, including access routes to the buildings on 18 to 19 Birdin Hill. A lot of signage, you've seen the signage that is required around the roundabouts for safety reasons. Retaining walls, different surfaces, tarmac and other hard surfacing to the other access roads. And importantly, lighting. And the lighting around the roundabout, of course, is not going to be low-level lighting. It's proper road lighting for safety reasons. All of this in a bid to make safe this convoluted layout that we discussed yesterday. And it now, I hadn't fully appreciated the point, but it actually appears that due to the difference, the movement in levels to enable the roundabouts to be built, it looks like you might even lose the view of the cowl altogether as you access the site. So in our submission, this urbanisation, combined with the loss of the wider agricultural setting that Ms Tucker stressed, most definitely causes further harm to the setting of the listed building, which, sir, we say you should give great weight. Now, Mr Miller, in his report, says, and this is paragraph 7.3.5, that because the roundabout would be the same level as the road, B2102, and there are buildings currently located between the roundabout and the outhouse, for those reasons he doesn't consider that the roundabout would have any material impact on the listed building. Well, we say, as for the reasons I've just described, that you should reject that view. The second point I make is the views of the Oast House from the west. So when you're standing on the edge of the housing estate, the other side of Framfield Stream, or you're looking at the Oast House from the west, I can't remember the name of the way, Widgeon Way. Mr Miller rightfully stressed the beautiful view that you get from the west of the Oast House. You get it currently, and the proposal now, the newly proposed scheme, yes, there are no houses. Well, there are some to the northwest, but the housing that was previously proposed completely on the west has been removed. But there is, and I think you stress this point again to you, sir, they're not leaving the west view unchanged. On the contrary, there's going to be substantial work done to the west area of the site in order to substantial work done and substantial changes made to that in order to accommodate the suds basins and the cycle and footpath. So as Ms Tucker, so they'll make extensive engineering works will be required to the sloping open land to the west to accommodate these drainage ponds and to flatten the landscape to accommodate the footpath and the cycleway. Now, as Ms Tucker said, the view up to the slope to the Oast House will be crossed by 2 to 3 metre wide cycle paths, lit cycle paths, and the slopes will need to be re-engineered to allow the paths to be built with an acceptable gradient. So substantial earthworks in my submission and building of embankments to reduce the gradients of the paths. And you can see the embankments that will be required from the transport drawings that were put in by Milestone yesterday. Drawing, you've got them in the A3, drawing 23138/014. And the following, 015. So it's the drawing at 014, sir.
SK.
Sorry, no, it's no SKs. It's just it's towards the beginning of the
Okay.
bundle, 23138/014.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And /015,
Yeah. Yeah.
the following document, the following plan.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the embankments that will need to be built as well as the suds ponds, the drainage ponds.
Yeah, yeah.
So our point is that the characteristic slope up to the Oast House will be diminished and urbanised by the proposed development.
So, sorry, all the points you've made are essentially repeating the points that Ms Tucker's made.
Yes.
There's no criticism of that, of
Yes.
course, but I've made detailed notes of her points, so you don't
There is
need
the
to.
third
you
and-
can
yeah.
merely say you agree with what
I
she
agree,
said.
but I agree. The third and final point I want to make is not a point that was made by Ms Tucker at all, and
Okay.
it might be a point that goes to planning benefits, but it is also a point that arises from the heritage issues, and unfortunately because of work commitments I won't be able to be here on Tuesday. So perhaps I could just make this point because it is also a heritage point, and it's the reliance that Mr Miller places on the proposal that the car park to the west of the Oast House,
Yeah.
which is currently hard surfaced, will be landscaped.
Yeah,
And as I said, that's the second of the 2 points that he, or the 2 pieces of advice he gave that he says means there is no harm.
yes, go on.
And I think we just touched upon this yesterday. That land was designated for commercial use as part of the 1986 planning permission for the commercial units. I understand that there has been no change of land use in the current description of the development, and it's not at all clear how such change of use will be secured. Again, this is a planning point that will be bringing up. The council will probably be bringing up. But it is important because Mr Miller says at paragraph 6.43 of his report that the removal of vehicles from the immediate setting of the Oast House so as to protect the setting of the listed building is important. But of course, as we saw yesterday, the vehicles will still need to be accommodated. Those 18 parking spaces will still need to be accommodated in the vicinity of the commercial yard. And obviously that's not addressed by Mr Miller in his report, but it is addressed, and you saw yesterday in the highways proof of evidence, and you saw a plan, which I understand the highways, council highways expert had not seen before. It's paid, if you want to go back to, just to remind yourself of it, there's a picture at it's the diagram at page 48 of the highways proof of evidence.
Yeah, I remember.
But you'll recall it came as a surprise to Miss Campbell. She wasn't aware of it. But it shows the 18 parking spaces moving in elsewhere into the yard. And there were 2 points.
Do you remember what Mr Tabachnik said about a Grampian condition?
Yes, I do. I understand about a Grampian position. That, of course, I think I understand what a Grampian condition is. The parking spaces obviously cannot be controlled because they're outside the land.
Yes.
That's subject to the application. They can't be controlled by this application, so there would have to be a Grampian condition. I am not an expert on that, and I'm sure that the council will make submissions on that. But it seems to me that given the importance that is given by Mr Miller to the landscaping around the Oast House, and this being one of the 2 points he says that lead him to change his advice from there being harm to being no harm.
Mm-hmm.
It is an important point that any Grampian condition should be that no development at all can take place on this site until there's been a separate application for the relocation of the parking.
Okay. Yes, okay. Do you want to respond to any of that?
Yeah, I'll do it in reverse order, sir. The basis of my finding of no harm is not the 2 pieces of advice I gave. The basis of my finding of no harm is set out in full in my proof, which is extensive in its description. Advice I gave was critical to shaping the scheme. So that's a citation out of context. The cycle path, sir, is described as substantial earthworks. with the phrase I wrote down. Substantial is a lot of something. You've seen the plan submitted for approval that shows the cutting, and terracing in some places, cutting in others, which is actually very minimal because the gradient of the slope is not that steep, and you'll form a judgment whether or not they're substantial. Whether or not you see them depends on the angle of view, because of course looking up the slope, rather take a section through it at different points, just in the mind's eye, I don't think it would be a noticeable feature in the landscape, because it's sitting at or thereabouts ground level, and occasionally it'll rise up, occasionally not. There's a landscaping scheme that would need to be done with that. So I don't see any problem with that. As to the suds, from the northwest view that I drew attention to, you wouldn't see the suds feature, which is in the southwest corner, as far as I can see, judging from the plans. And even if you were to see the suds, you would see, for over a distance, vegetation, which of a kind that you associate with suds, which is not going to be alien. Because remembering, sir, the land that we're talking about has no intrinsic interest. Its interest is only contribution to setting. And neither, sir, I think, would you be aware of the suds as a engineered feature when you're standing at the boundary, the new boundary of the Ouse, and looking down the slope, because of the slope interposing. I just don't think you'd see it. So on the dimensions of 5 meters, I'll just tell you, looking at 23138 SK29, which is the drawing I asked for reference to, the numbers are the access drawings, the new roundabout drawing. Yeah. So, you can take the measurements from that, obviously. And it goes from a curb level of 46.108.
Are you looking at the main roundabout?
Yeah, I am. I'm looking at the junction with the B road, to 47.308, which is, you can do the calculations, about a meter, less than a meter actually, gradient. It's at that point that you have a retaining wall, which is about, the relevant dimensions are proposed back of verge land 47.629 to then 42.05, so that's a 1.4 meters. So I don't know where the figure of 5 meter comes from. And obviously that retaining wall is seen behind a verge which could be planted. So I don't see there's any reason with that. This is a general highways landscaping point. I don't find any. So the idea that there's a massive level change across this, I don't accept. I don't need to say any more so than I've said about the relevance of the view on the approach, except to note that the current approach is not the historic approach to the farmyard. As I understand the plans in front of us, it's from the 1980s commercial scheme, and it's in its current form anyway. I'm not entirely sure we know where the historic approach to the barn was, but that, I don't think it much matters. It doesn't appear to be the current one. Yeah. I'm going to talk just about finishing off that point. I think the roundabout was, or a scheme junction was presented at the pre-app, and the point was not made. There was no concern about that. And likewise, sir, in the pre-app letter, which references we saw tranquility as a finding of the inspector, the council's advice expressing concerns about the scheme did not raise that point. And I just felt, because it's come up in a different context, sir, I would just give you my view on the tranquility point, which is in my evidence, obviously. Sir, the existing situation is that on the site, in various parts, you are aware of traffic noise on the B road. I was anyway, it has been. Second, it's a commercial unit, and you have information on vehicle numbers and HGV movements, i.e. it's not the kind of vehicle movement you associate with a farm because it's got a commercial use. And then as to noise, which is, effectively one of the key components of tranquility, we hope, everyone would hope that the cycleway and the pedestrian route is well used, obviously, but it's it's unlikely to be so heavily used as to be intrusive. And bear in mind, there's a hospital and housing estate to the west. And generally, sir, I mean, housing schemes are not schemes that generate a lot of environmental noise. I mean, it's not an industrial or commercial premises with a lot of deliveries generally. And it'll be done within estate roads. And I just don't know what is so terrible about this noise that it's going to actually undermine the significance of the building. A lot has been said, sir, also about lighting. I mean, the OAST is not illuminated at night. It's not appreciable at night. And obviously commercial use has lighting associated with it. So I just think it's a non-point. It's not discernible in the evening. And I've put into my evidence the lighting contour plan, which anyway shows that there's no light spill, even close to the OAST. So I don't understand the point being made, really. I can't understand how it's actually harmful to the ability to experience significance. So make sure I've picked up everything. Yeah. So I'm just checking. Yes, and I think in general terms, I think particularly on the landscape, the bollards and the movement and the tranquility and so forth, the fact that there is a change, and that change may be discernible at one time or another because you see a cyclist on the path, for example, or in the evening you might be aware of some glow from bollards, which I'm not so sure you would be. That fact in itself doesn't equate to harm, which I think is a trite point, but I just want to make it clear a lot of the complaints are about the sheer fact of change. And that obviously we have to go right the way back to why is the building special, and does any of that erode your understanding of it? But
Okay.
that's all I have to say, sir.
Yeah. I think we covered step 3 then.
Could I just make just a couple of points?
Yeah.
Obviously, the pre-app letter is available in various places in the submissions. It's at my...
The pre-app letter.
Yes, Appendix B.
Yeah.
We do mention highways, and we say it is understood you will have separate pre-application engagement with East Sussex County Council Highways. Well, that was discussed yesterday. And that because there were matters of highway safety identified and supported by the inspector of the previous appeal. And the end of that section, it says, design and heritage may need further investigation. And if you look at Mr. Brown's evidence, SB 6.1, in his proof of evidence, it shows the pre-app layout with the proposed roundabout, which is a very much smaller piece of infrastructure and engineering, and very much more towards the line of the existing access into the site. Now, the original access into the site is actually on all the previous maps, Ordnance Survey maps up until the 1986 application changed it, and it actually runs parallel, does the current access. The original access is the one that goes up next door to 18 and 19.
Yeah.
That we saw on site, and I would just like to stress that in the high wheeled, which we're in the national character area, light glow is something that is particularly considered. And it's not just I saw the lighting plan at the back of the proof of evidence, but it's not just the where the light gets to on the ground. It is actually how the glow appears in the sky, and we're on a prominent position here, and we've had problems in the past with golf clubs and light glow with driving ranges and things like that. You don't have to be able to see it to be able to know it's there because of the glow in the sky.
Okay. Is, in terms of item 6, step 4, is there anything else we need to discuss? So the actual appeal decision, Is this something that the LPA wants to discuss specifically?
So I mean, it might be helpful to put it up. So it's in CD11, and then it's 11.20, sir. And really, it's really sort of a prompt for the discussion. You would have seen from Ms Tucker's evidence and Mr Redmond's that a particular concern of the council is that there's some effectively unnecessary harm. So you could actually have a large housing scheme on this site without the development to the west of the Oast, which is particularly harmful. And I'll ask either Mr Redmond or Ms Tucker to comment on the number of houses that one would have to lose in order to preserve the western side of the setting, or at least to largely preserve it. But this is an example of a very recent appeal decision in relation to a solar farm where the inspector found low to moderate harm to some assets, but was particularly persuaded by the fact that there was one part of the solar farm that was particularly harmful. And actually, if you cut that away, you could still get a substantial amount of benefit. And so sort of paragraph 45 is the sort of culmination of that. But so we'll leave you to read that decision in your own time.
Yeah, I know about this.
You know about it. Yeah. So it's really just illustrating the point that the council is making. And perhaps this may have been discussed on site or not, but perhaps if one of those to my left could give a view, because I think in the appellant's opening it was said, well, you'd have to lose 60 or 70 houses. The council doesn't believe that's the case. I don't know if Mr Redmond wants to comment on
that. Yeah.
So we've looked at the illustrative plan and we equate the emission to the northwest of those units would be about 10 in total, and then you're looking at about 25 to the southwest in order to pull the development away from that western edge of the farmstead, and we consider those to be sources of avoidable harm, and loss of those units or emission of those units would materially reduce the heritage harm.
So 20 dwellings to the southwest.
About 25 roughly, and then the 10 to the northwest.
On the northwest, yeah. Okay.
So it'd be incredibly useful if, in particular for the southwest area, Mr Redmond can either give us a marked up plan now, or he can show us how he's drawing his lines now, so I can understand where that's come from.
Don't have a plan to hand, but I can come and mark on a plan if that would be useful.
Well, I'd like to get a general idea now, and that may be enough for us.
That's fine, I'm happy to come up.
Okay.
Do you want to add or do you want?
You can just draw it on there if you want.
Well, yeah, Dr. Meany. Sure.
Yeah.
Mark up on that one so you can see. That would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Go on.
We've only roughly done it, but the view was across here, so losing that wedge, and then the 10 and the road infrastructure to those. I made that about 25, but obviously there may be room to pull the line that way, and you could potentially have retain, because I think I've actually these units when I calculated it, but there's obviously some leeway there, isn't there, in terms of how definitive that line is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
And for, I just need to take if I take a picture of that, you're working
yeah, just take a picture of it, yeah.
that copy, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
So basically, that's what the LPA wanted to say about
That was the point.
step 4. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah,
I want to make a couple of comments, sir.
yeah.
So step 4, council was very keen to put into the agenda. I'm very happy with it. It was their suggestion, though. And so I want you to take you, sir, to my appendices. Or if you have any other copy to hand of GPA 3 from Historic England, because that's the point I want to make with reference to that guidance. So in my appendices, sir, it's internal page 16, because it's digital, you know, the pages have their own internal pagination. Sorry. So my appendices, and if you... Page 16, it's in the top left in black.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a paper copy, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yep. And we've put 2 pages together, you appreciate. So look, step 4, sir. The relevant paragraph is 38. And I just want to explain, and this is where they say enhancement. So this is under, again, 4 ways to maximize enhancement, avoid or minimize harm. The first 2 bullets, remove or remodel an intrusive building or feature. Well, we did that through the pre-application process and the submission. Next 2 bullets, replace a detrimental feature by a new, more harmonious one, and restore or reveal lost historic feature or view. Those are the landscape enhancements to the setting of the OST. Bullet point 3, introduce a wholly new feature, adding to public appreciation, introducing new views. We've explained how the cycle route up will do that. This is the bullet point. They're not numbered, sadly, but these are bullets 4 and 5. And the last, improving public access to interpretation of the asset. So all of the scheme changes that were affected after my advice and involvement are captured in paragraph 38. And then paragraph 39 elaborates the point, but in the first sentence includes the effective law at the end. It'll be the 4th line down. The creation of effective long-term visual or acoustic screening or management measures secured by planning and legal obligation. So we refer to various points to the landscape scheme, which is not in place, and which would, if there were any concerns, enable another level or step. So effectively, at RM stage, conditions discharge stage, we can go back to step 4 and remove any harm if it's deemed to be unacceptable. And clearly that's an approach that the council endorsed in its 2021 advice to the refused application in the paragraph that we saw already. Subject to a layout, I'm quoting, at reserve matter stage, informed by a thorough understanding of the listed building setting, it should be possible to accommodate development proposed with the red line there without harm. So what's being referred to is exactly the same, the stage I've referred to, which is design refinement at reserve matter stage. Because obviously this outline application, we haven't produced a landscape scheme. And I think I do want to comment on Mr. Griffith's decision, which I read.
Sorry, so you're saying that this could be dealt with at reserve matters stage?
Well, so no, I think what I'm saying, sir, is that A, we followed the steps in formulating the scheme.
Yeah.
We followed them exactly. If there is a concern in your mind or in the local authority's mind that the next stage there is important harmful effects that could be mitigated, for example, through landscape, or detailed design, then that provides another opportunity to reduce harm or remove it. Again, that's not my evidence, you appreciate, but that's, that's an observation. And that would be consistent with the HE advice. And it is, I think, consistent with the approach the council was advocating in 2021 about refining the scheme.
So the appellant is saying that although it's applying for up to 290 houses,
190, sir.
sorry, 190, that I could say something in my decision that would lead you to bill less than 190.
No, we're not saying.
We're not saying that at all.
Good.
No,
Because-
exactly.
Because that's not what you're saying.
All I'm saying, sir, is that there is another stage of design at landscape stage, which will enable the local authority to, if it still has concerns after assuming you allow the appeal, if they still have concerns, to develop the design further. We don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, I
okay.
get that. Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting, sir, you need to have regard to some scheme that's not in front of you.
Yes.
Okay. I'm
So-
just pointing out, I'm just making an observation about the process which is advocated by Historic England.
But yes, but the line that Mr. Redmond's just drawn on there, you're not suggesting that I can somehow
No.
engineer that?
No,
No.
no.
No. Okay.
Sorry, no. I'm sorry if there was that confusion in the way I was addressing you. Not at all, actually, because we think it's acceptable as presented, obviously.
Yes, I get that. Yeah.
I want to say briefly, make a comment about Mr. Griffiths, unless Mr.
Well,
Tabachnik wants to
I just
comment.
want to say, and I don't want to jump ahead too much to the submissions, but we certainly regard Mr. Redmond's line as completely unnecessary, and quite apart from not being in keeping with the pre-app letter. But you've got that point.
Yeah.
But if you thought that you would prefer, say, to see a bit more of a setback from the easement line, you could certainly indicate that. And if we were talking about a handful of units, there's absolutely no reason. It's a very generous layout otherwise. If you look at the rest of the scheme, there's absolutely no reason why we wouldn't be able to accommodate 190 in the rest of the scheme with you saying take it back a tiny bit further, for example. Or, yes, this is acceptable, but you need some more landscaping here, there and somewhere else. I expect that to be dealt with at reserved matters stage. So we're most definitely saying this is an outline scheme. This is not detailed proposal in front of you. There most certainly could be tweaks. Things could be units that are single family homes now could become 2 semis or something like that. And there's, as I say, if you look at the rest of the layout, there's more than enough scope for some reorientation of different units. I don't think that applies to 26 units, which is the Redmond line, but we think the Redmond line is unjustified anyway. But there is undoubtedly a role to be played in decision making here from the fact that this is an outline scheme and an illustrative proposal. It's not entirely the way it's been addressed.
Yes. So just to be clear, the layout plan is an illustrative.
Absolutely.
It's not one of the plans that I'm
The
considering.
SOCG couldn't be clearer on what the
Yeah.
scheme plans are,
Yeah.
and that this is only
Yeah.
illustrative. It's one way in which the scheme could come forward. But as I
Yes.
said, if you wanted some tweaks or some further minor setbacks, you could indicate that, and there's more than enough space elsewhere to move those units to.
I
in
understand
effect.
what you're saying. Yes, what you're saying is, yes, you can increase the density or the layout or the design
Yeah.
on the rest of it. If, for instance, I thought Mr. Redmond's lopping off of the 25 units in the southwest is the right way to go.
To take another example, if you, absolutely, the
Yes.
same premise on
Yes.
we don't accept their
Yeah.
arguments at all.
Yeah.
Let's say you thought, well, 10 houses, I'm a bit worried about the councils, it's not really a heritage point, but they made a point about design and density. Maybe there's something in that, maybe there should only be 7 units.
Yeah.
in that section.
Yeah.
Then obviously we could fit 3
Yes.
houses somewhere else.
And what you're saying is, well, it would be helpful to us if you could indicate that in your decision. If you, yes.
Well,
yes.
I think what I'm saying is, obviously, your decision is
Yeah.
is for you. If you thought there was a particular point that you would like to see, and I deliberately put it like
Yeah,
that,
of
you would
course,
like
yeah.
to see at reserved matters stage, you can indicate,
Yeah.
and you can fully expect that there'll be no wiggle room.
Yeah.
On the basis of that.
Yeah.
So I'm just simply. Well, I think that's the point I'm seeking to.
Yes, I thought that would be the point you
Yeah,
were.
but we're definitely not saying that there's scope later on
For reducing the
to
numbers,
approve,
yes.
Only to insist on no more than 150 or something.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that without a condition.
No. Okay.
Yeah,
On that point, sorry, clearly you would need to be satisfied that the number of units could be accommodated. And
course.
our point would be, without an illustrative layout plan, how could you be?
Yes.
And indeed, how could the council be? How could consultees be? And even an indication in your decision, of course, doesn't then actually affect the scope of the reserved matters.
No,
which could,
I
so
understand
you
that.
know, yes, sir.
Yeah. So that.
Sir, I did have, I'm sorry to cut across. I had one point to
Go
make
on,
on the
yeah.
Mr. Griffith's decision.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, it's not, as a planner, it may be a legal submissions point, I don't know. And I think the point being made is that, if there's a less damaging scheme, well, that's relevant. And that was the context of Mr. Redmond's line. I just wanted to make an observation on how Mr. Griffiths came to that comment and invite you.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems there the facts are very different to the facts here. Very different. Mostly in this respect, that the promoter of the scheme hadn't even realized that there were 3 listed farm buildings whose setting was directly affected by the scheme. And so, quite properly, Mr. Griffiths, I guess, formed the view that nobody could take it into account then, because it had just been missed. And that's why he's adopted the wording, I think, at paragraph 46, where he says, I've carried out this balancing exercise on the basis of the scheme as presented and formed my conclusions. That's right. However, having regard to the way the matter was explored at the inquiry, which is the emergence of these other assets that nobody really had an opportunity to take into account. In this case, the facts are entirely different. We've known what the asset is from the beginning. There's never been any doubt. Again, I'm not commenting on how you treat that decision. That's a sort of legal matter, I guess, but just from the point of view of the difference factually between the two schemes, as it couldn't be more different, really, because we've never been in any doubt on in this case.
So may I just add a comment of my own about the solar farm decision when your pen stopped moving?
Yeah.
It has. It's important as well that the assets that the inspector was most concerned about in that case were much higher order heritage assets than we're dealing with here. I'm obviously not diminishing the OST for a moment.
Just
when I
remind
say
me
that.
what they were in that.
They were a grade 1 church and a grade 2 star other building, manor house.
Yes.
And the inspector said there's low to medium harm to the setting of those two buildings, the grade 1 building and the grade 2 star building. He also said there's low, less than substantial harm to the setting of the conservation area and to, I think, 3 other grade 2 buildings. And obviously that's a completely different magnitude of impact than we're concerned with here. I'm also not in, well, I'll save other comments for next week.
Yeah, I understand the point. Yeah,
Thank
okay. Is there anything you want to say about? No, okay. So you've given me the hopper hut stuff, just by way of illustration, yeah? Is there anything else you want to say?
No, it was just by way of illustration, as they were referred to in paragraph 6.9 of the proof of evidence, as being, it wasn't something discussed at the pre-app meeting.
Sure.
And I think I just would like to say, just to refer you back to, refer you to paragraph 8 of the PPG, which has been in place since, on my revision, 23rd of July 2019, which looks at how can proposals avoid or minimise harm to the significance of a heritage asset.
Para 8 of the PPG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, early appraisals can identify alternative development options. For example, more sensitive designs or different orientations that would both conserve the heritage assets and deliver public benefits in a more sustainable and appropriate way. Well, the public benefit test is not for me to do. But what I took away from the Ashford appeal was that the inspector said, well, you can still do this, but there's alternative ways of doing it. And that's exactly what we've just suggested with the Redmond 9.
Sorry, from this decision, yeah?
So the
From the-
PPG, so I think it's meant to be a core document. There's actually only one paragraph of the PPG.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're saying it's that I can take away from this Ashford decision, yeah. Okay. Right. So have we finished that then?
I think so. So I just wanted to make an observation in light of what Ms. Tucker has said about my colleague leading you to all the same places that we stood in. I'm in your hands entirely as to whether or not a second visit with the pair of us is relevant. I'm not saying it is if you're satisfied you've seen those positions that I drew your attention to. I'm really not. It was just I hadn't, because I wasn't present, I didn't know exactly where you lingered and what was said about different points. But I really am easy about that and in your hands. I'm not insisting, in other words. I couldn't, but...
Yes, I'm not sure. The one view that I'm not sure we did look at was that when you were talking about taking a line from the west of the Oast House to the edge of the red line. We stood where the nib was going. Did we stand at the boundary and look at it from there?
We stood at the top of the stairs and looked across.
And looked across the other. Yeah.
But we didn't stand at ground level and look across.
That might be useful.
Well, yeah. That's yeah. So yeah, we'll look at ground level, the views outwards from the Oast, and if we go to the western boundary from a line taken from there and look up again, when we can have another look from where the branch of the path was going to go, so we can see Dr. Mealy's big beautiful view. Yeah. So sorry, I just. I'm not saying you're like Donald Trump, but it did remind me. You know.
Sir.
we can have a look at that. Yes.
Really, I just made that further comment because I didn't want to force it on you. I just wanted to make sure. That
We'll. Yeah. So are we?
Sir, can I just clarify? Have you, or are you going to go and look at Widgeon Way and the hospital car park views?
Do you want to come with me to look at?
Not necessarily.
No, I don't want to.
But
No.
well, I was thinking I can look at that at the same time. So, I mean, on my own, I can look
Absolutely.
at that. But, so are we going to have lunch here and then go, or does everyone just want to go there now?
Oh, well,
I mean, I'm assuming that you want a lunch break.
Yes.
Yeah?
we either go there now or just have a lunch and go. I'm happy to get on with it, subject to the inspector.
It's entirely up to you. We're
Yeah.
very happy to organise lunch here and then go on.
Or
Okay. Do you think it will take a long time, like it did
No.
yesterday? No, because there's hardly anyone here
lunch,
today.
I mean, I've got a preference to go now, so it's fresh in our mind, and then we can all have a break early and you can get off as well. But in your hands, whatever suits you best. You've been going for a while, so you may want a break, but my preference is to go. So, to suit you, sir.
Well, what about the council? Do you need a break? Do you need a lunch break, or are you happy to just go there now? Okay.
Yeah, well, that's a yes.
Well,
Happy to go there now.
Well, I'm happy to go there now. So just to be clear, fine, we'll do that, and then I'll look at Woodgen Way, and then we can just go our own ways for the weekend. So we can leave everything in here, as I understand. Obviously, nothing valuable. So we'll come back on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock to do the planning evidence, starting with Mr. Redmond. Yeah.
I'll bring my proof, actually.
Yeah.
Sir, can I just before everyone disappears, I won't be able to join you, I'm afraid, for the further site visit this afternoon, and also I think I mentioned earlier that work commitments mean I won't be able to be here on Tuesday.
Yes.
Just so you know that, but I think more importantly, yesterday you asked me to produce a summary note of the submissions I made.
Yes.
Which I will do, but over the weekend, but because I can't be here on Tuesday, I was going to propose emailing those to PINS.
Yes.
And obviously copying in the appellant.
Yes,
and the
please.
council.
Email them to the case officer.
To the case officer.
And copy the parties in. Yes, thank you.
Sir, I've got 2 points, well, 1 point actually, relating to 2 documents, if I may.
Yes, go on.
So yesterday, Mr. Dabachnik referenced the Yatton appeal decision in response to an exchange he had with Miss Smith. So we've got copies to hand around. That's document 1.
Oh, yes.
The second document, which I suspect you may find more interesting, is the compendium of what comprising the 106. So the 106
yes,
is agreed.
I was going to ask about the
We've
106.
got your bound copy to take away.
Yes, good.
It's all agreed, and the intention was to discuss that on Wednesday morning at the inquiry, sir. So it'll give you
Yes.
plenty of time to sink your teeth into it.
Yes, so
Hand it up now.
just yes. So is the 106? Is everything agreed in it?
It's all agreed
Oh,
between
great.
the parties.
Okay.
No issues of dispute at all. It's
Okay.
all agreed, ready to be signed, subject to you having any points on Wednesday morning.
Okay. So Tuesday, the planning evidence, the whole of Tuesday, which should be enough. Yeah. Should be. Wednesday morning, the discussion on the 106 and the
Yep.
conditions. Wednesday afternoon, the closings. Yeah.
Precisely.
So we should be finished Wednesday. I don't know, 5 o'clock, something.
Subject to the drafting of the 106, if it's been done well, then we might
Yeah.
be expediting that, sir.
Yeah, it could be earlier. Yeah, hopefully earlier.
We may be done by lunch.
We may be done by lunchtime. Yeah. I'm just thinking of the hire car company and what I need to tell them. Yes, okay.
Just to make you aware, on the 106, we've published it on the planning register and also put it on the inquiry webpage, so it's in the public domain.
Okay, fine. All right, that's fine. Great. Just remind me about when we mentioned Yatton. Oh, the David Prentice decision, yeah.
Yes, the plus or minus 25%.
Oh, that's, yes, the sequential,
Yeah, one aspect of the sequential.
one aspect of the sequential test, yeah. Yeah.
As it related to my submissions, can I have a copy? Yeah, thanks. And the 106, if you've got a spare one, that'd be great. Thanks. Sorry? If you've got one. Okay, well, I should refer to the online one. So, Mr. Yes, okay, the online one. All right, thank you very much for your help.
So sorry, we're adjourned, and so I'll meet you at the site. Well, I'll just pack up here, and then I'll go to the site. the same place where we met before. So yeah.